Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 3 of the Case King Pro Series. After what has already been 2 fantastic rounds of this championship so far, we take to the legendary circuit of Silverstone after your votes came into effect. It was a toss-up between this track and heading to Barcelona, and you chose this one. In my personal opinion, the better of the 2 choices. But who am I to judge? We'll let the racing do the talking on that front. A fantastic track with so much historical action, legendary moments around here as well, even some very recently in the real world of motorsport. But tonight it is going to be taking us to the 3rd round of this championship after what's already been quite an interesting bounce around from the season we've had so far. Last time out, when we were in effect in this fantastic series, Amedeo Castorino, the reigning champion of the Case King Pro Series, took to a top step of the podium once again. And after a little bit of an underwhelming performance from him in the first round of the season, he bounced back very strongly and put himself into the championship fight as we have come to expect. But as we well know, Amedeo's season last time around in Season 14, the way he got that championship wrapped up was through consistency, and the man has had the best consistency so far. Leon Burns, a little bit of a dark horse himself in the Ferrari, and was on target to potentially look to take a race win last time out at Suzuka after a little bit of door-to-door action with Philip Menard. Saw him taken out of that fight, but was promoted back to the podium after some post-race penalties, but still bringing in enough points to put himself to the top of the championship standing. So an interesting mix and toss-up of things so far in this race, and I think Silverstone is once again going to shake things around because we may have some mixed conditions this evening. We've got quite an array of different manufacturers on track, and we have some of the very best on the LFM platform coming together for some incredible GT3 action. Nightbot already coming into action to strike down on you wonderful lot in the chat once again. He does try his best, but he does get a bit confused from time to time. But if you can, contain your excitement, stay away from that caps lock button. He will let you get away with celebrating, cheering on your favourite drivers, and cheering on this incredible group that are going to be taking to the circuit for this evening. Of course, because the other thing that is a little bit different for what we have tonight is that for the first time this season, we have a 90-minute race instead of that 60-minute period. May not sound like it's too much of a difference when we consider in the world of GT3 racing, we can end up having races up to 24 hours in length. 30 minutes doesn't necessarily seem like too much of a change. But in terms of how it plays into effect of the fuel effects of these cars, how much they actually consume over the course of a stint, the way that the tyres end up wearing over the course of a stint, and how that affects the balance as you make your way through each of those portions of the race, can very much have a major effect in terms of which cars end up being the ones that are at the pointy end of the grid. And that, combined with Silverstone with some inherently British characteristics of some mixed conditions, with a longer period of time for us to go racing with, it starts to throw some extra fun things into the pot as well. So I'm sure heading into the action tonight, it is going to be a fun one and a great one indeed. I cannot wait to see how these guys get on for the evening. A little bit of a pre-warning, unfortunately, again, I am having to stream over the Wi-Fi for this evening. Fingers crossed this should be the last time if all goes to plan, but I do apologise in advance if we do have any moments of frame drops, etc. over the course of the stream. But fingers crossed we will survive until the end. And I'm already seeing cheering in the chat from team managers. Pranav once again cheering on all of his guys for Visceral Esports. And also seeing, of course, some support for Mr. Carpet. The Bentley driver lined up on the front row of the grid last time at Suzuka. But unfortunately, all went rather pear-shaped in the opening lap of that race. Was victim of the TC0 meta that we tend to see in the world of ACC nowadays. Looped it out of the hairpin, and upon request, we'll move on. But with it being arguably the Bentley's home race, then potentially we may have some prospects for him to come into some good action once again. So I have to wait and see how it all plays out in that regard, and whether or not he can take that Bentley up to the podium positions over the course of this one, and see how it all comes together for this race. And of course, last time it was a little bit of a surprise how well the car performs in Suzuka, because the nature of that circuit, some fast-flowing corners, some low-speed traction zones as well. It's not inherently, characteristic of where we would consider the Bentley's strengths to be, but overall did a pretty handy job. So I have to see how Teemu gets on with that today, as we should be able to hopefully make our way into the server relatively shortly. Of course, these guys, they have their few minutes of practice to get themselves dialed in before we go into qualifying, and then that formidable 90 minutes worth of racing. And these final moments of practice, especially on days where we do have these longer races, these moments are even more pivotal in terms of how you dial in the pace, performance, and your driving style. Because if we are going to be facing some mixed conditions for the evening, you want to make sure that the car that you have underneath you is going to be conducive and dialed in, working well in those array of different conditions. Equally, you want to make sure that you get yourself into a good spot on the grid, and so that then you can really keep yourself out of some of the craziness that we do sometimes see in the world of low fuel motorsport, and so that you can get your race off to a good start. So we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out for our drivers this evening, and we'll be making our way across in just a moment, having a small little crisis in the background, but fingers crossed, if all goes to plan, we should be up and ready fairly soon, and we can see exactly how our guys are getting on. I'll be very interested to know your predictions for the evening, everybody. That's, of course, we've had a bit of a mixed bag over the course of the season so far, and a little bit of a shuffle, of course, with the Ford Mustang joining us for the first time this season as well. It's given us some extra thinking to do when it's come to race day, as to knowing exactly where the cars are going to be in effect for the race itself, because of course with the changing BOP we make our way over the course of the season, can be a little bit tricky to know how each car is going to perform, and because we do have cheering for our usual favourites, but it's always interesting to know exactly where you guys sit in terms of thinking the racing is going to be going. So we've got cheers for more of Teemu, Mr. Carpet. P1 is the vote from some in the chat, and absolutely a lot of shuffling around could very much be happening tonight. So we will see how it all plays out. These guys will be going toe-to-toe, of course, competing for some incredible prizes up for grabs this season. That's the top three looking to get their hands on some very nice bits of tech. Of course, all brought to you by caseking.de. Wonderful, one of many sponsors that makes all of this possible, as well as you wonderful people sitting and enjoying the action. Always a pleasure to bring you the world of the Case King Pro Series. And possibly also Luke Whitehead getting the win. Of course, two-time Pro Series champion is the Veloce Esports driver. And he certainly is a man on a mission when he's behind the wheel of his car and he's dialed into the circuit. He is formidable and a very, very tough driver to beat. Can be absolutely spectacular over the course of one lap especially. And he has brought out some fantastic laps in qualifying, and sometimes track position at certain circuits is all that you need to get the race win done. But 90 minutes of racing, like I say, tyre wear is going to play into effect. Mixed conditions could play further into effect as well. And absolutely always hard to count him out in this one. So he will be fired up, I'm sure, taking to a local circuit himself for the British driver, and see how it all comes together for him. I mean, in the Porsche, of all cars, we have seen, that car go very well at Silverstone in the past. It's one where if you can get it dialed in nicely, you can really kind of lean on that car, lean on its handling characteristics to get you through certain parts of the circuit just so much more rapidly than certain other platforms. But at the same time, it can be a tricky one, can be a leery one, and a difficult one to balance over the course of a stint in dry conditions, for one, let alone if you are facing mixed conditions as well. That's where it can start to get particularly tricky. So how he gets on with that tonight, I have to wait and see. But if anyone can dial in that car, Luke Whitehead is certainly likely to be one of the drivers that will be able to get the absolute maximum that chassis and platform has to offer. Qualifying is now underway, and we should be able to make our way over in just a split second and see how our guys are getting on. First flying lap should give us a relatively decent indicator of how these guys are performing. Doesn't look like we've got anything too tricky in terms of weather for them to contest with in these opening moments of the session. Of course, we have had times in the past of the Pro Series where qualifying has somewhat been decided by the opening laps that have been sent through the track. Watkins Glen was a mighty example of that. I think it was Marco Schada, if memory serves. He was the first one out on circuit, and he was the first one in the resulting grid. Couldn't quite convert it into a race win, but certainly gave it a pretty good shout as well. So we see George Boothby, the winningest driver in Case King Pro Series history, once again trying to see if he can go for this championship that has continued to elude him from season after season, contesting in those top 3 positions now, I think for 4 or 5 seasons in a row. Of course, an immensely fast driver, but just hasn't quite always been able to gather it all together. In the championship at the moment, he still sits inside the top 5, less than 100 points away from your championship leader, Leon Button. Of course, in the early stages of the season, points are very, very close together. But George Boothby, he'll be looking to try to bounce back towards some of those winning ways. Managed to get himself on the podium last time. Very ambitious overcuts, which worked out very nicely in the closing stages of that race at Suzuka. But he is yet to take his first win of the season. He'll be another one of the British drivers looking to try to do it on home turf, and he's shown his team ex-teammate Grant Carreras what he has got in the Mustang. Currently the fastest car on circuit with a 56.595. Timo Karppinen just a tenth of a second behind on a 56.685. The Grip Packs Engineering Bentley weaving its way through Magnussen and Beckett, and I'm sure that car, by the looks of it, is going to be contesting towards the pointy end of the grid once again. Timo, he is a race winner from the past, but sometimes it just hasn't quite gone his way when he's had the pace underneath him. Pranav once again getting a little bit eager on the keyboard, and Nightbot striking down once more. Luke Whitehead makes it a Veloce Esports front row and a British front row for the time being. We'll have to see as 10 minutes left on the clock, so plenty more times to make things change as it stands. And big thank you for the cheer in the chat as well from Turbo Pavey. Thank you very much for all the incredible support that we have had over recent weeks, and I'm sure also support for this man as well in a moment who is pushing extremely hard. He was 3/10 up. He was going purple on that lap. He has lost a little bit of time. A scary moment for the Finnish driver. Grip Packs not quite coming to fruition as he made his way through Abbey Curve at a great deal of knots. Put him a little bit offline for the braking zone of Village Corner and through the loops. So lost a 10th overall, still going quickly. George Boothby, though, has found 3/10 of his own. He's just a little bit further up the order as he gets a nice little drift heading on through Brooklands. Squeeze the power on the exit of Luffield, use all of the exit curb and a touch more as he makes his way through Woodcote. And Grant Carreras provisionally sets the pace, but George Boothby will then go quickest for the meantime. Tell you what, Luke Whitehead, very, very quick lap from the Porsche driver as well. Timo Karppinen did improve actual fact, an identical lap time to the 1,000th to Grant Carreras. as we get more of these times coming in. Two very quick cars on their way. Luke Whitehead is 4 tenths up as he approaches the final sequence of corners, as also Nicholas Huben going very quickly as well, and he is only halfway around the circuit, so keep an eye on the Aston Martin driver as well in the background. 4 tenths up for Luke Whitehead, going to be very close. He might get himself to provisional pole with this one. What's it going to be? And it is going to be a 56.220, but Huben moving quickly as well. The Aston Martins looking like they are competitive, and of course that will look to bring in the likes of last week's winner and the reigning champion Amadeo Castorino into the fight as well, if he's got a good BOP in his favour. Even if he's not always the outright best in qualifying, so often he just keeps himself in the mix, allows himself a chance to pounce when others start to get it wrong, and so often has come out on top as a result. Nicholas Huben rounding out through the last couple of corners. He's maintained that 4/10 advantage. It's going to be very close towards the line, but I think it is going to be good enough to take that provisional top spot with 7.5 minutes on the clock left to go, and he's the first man to do a 56.1. Nicholas Huben is your provisional pole sitter as it stands. Luke Whitehead, though, is once again going very quickly. He's 1 to 2 tenths up. You can see Delta bouncing around for the British driver, but this Porsche is looking quick, and Luke Whitehead is looking like he is in good form. We'll go on board with the Porsche to flat six, screaming at the rear, ducks his way into Abbey Curve, uses all of the curb on the exit, cuts his way through the left-hand side of the corner, back across to open up the line, heading in towards Village Corner. Through the apex he goes, avoid the sausage curb on the inside line, and now negotiate your way through that very tight part of the loop. The Porsche behaves so nicely through there. If you can get it dialed in, the traction very rewarding. Luke Whitehead, though, not quite the best exit through back corner. Dropped a little bit of time, but he is still doing a lap that is quick enough to make his way to the top position. If he can get this all together, it could even be a 55. Tuck your way into the apex of the first parts of Luffield. Back on the power, using the AstroTurf on the exit as well. It's a great lap from Luke Whitehead as he looks ahead towards the line. The shortest run he could possibly take. It's a 56.022. Not quite into the 55s as of yet, but still a very good lap indeed. Valentin Barrier improves up to P14. We've also got other drivers in here. Sebastian Zehentner currently making his way around half a second to 6/10 up on his lap. Trying to see what the Aston Martin driver can do. Rounding out through the final corner, the number 26 car going to head towards the line. It's going to be a good improvement, maybe towards top 15. He does indeed. Goes into P12 on exactly the same lap time, I think, as his teammate, Lucas Roda. So the two Simar C cars, I believe those are, doing 56.412. So the intra-competition between them alive and fiery as ever. Luke Addison further down the order is improving on his lap time as well. 4/10 up for the Mustang. South African good across the line, goes into P36. Times the Genesis Esports driver has been absolutely formidable. Of course, has generally speaking either been in the likes of the BMW, the Ferrari, and maybe just taking a little bit more time to get this car dialed in underneath him. But still, a few moments left on the clock, just over 5 minutes of the session remaining for a final opportunity to improve. So we shall see how he gets on. Meanwhile, we look out to George Boothby, continuing to charge along, see what he can do. Tucking the Mustang into the apex. He's currently 1/10 of a second down on his previous best lap, so maybe not an improvement this time around. Grant Caracas for Scuderia Ferrari Esports team, making his way through Mackinson Beckett's. That is a place where the 296 is going to be extremely strong. The mid-engine platform of that car handles beautifully in medium high speed corners, loses out of the slow speed acceleration zones. Not the greatest amount of torque on board this car. Can be a great platform though when the mixed conditions start to kick in, and does tend to struggle a little bit with top end, so considering the high speed nature of his circuit, may struggle just a smidge to make overtakes happen. But Grant Caracas, of course, a champion in his own right, a fantastic season in his championship winning campaign as well, and he'll be looking to see what he can do in the Ferrari, the number 9 car, moving along very nicely. Still very even with his previous best lap time. So not too many cars right now finding improvements on their previous best. You can see Marco Schade down the order, very kind of level with his previous best. The number 25 Honda Get Quick E-Racing. Trying to see if he can get a little bit quicker. Not too far away from the top 15. Currently occupied by Jardier, one of his better qualifyings overall. Of course, I'm sure he would love to be featuring more inside the top 10, but has had a tendency to lack a little bit of one-lap pace, but often so strong and negotiating his way through the field and moving himself up the order. Marco Schade losing out some time in the middle portion of the lap, so it doesn't look like he'll be improving anytime soon. Let's go on board with the championship leader, Leon Burnt, in the number 29 Ferrari, the Ren Wilson esports car, making his way in towards Village Corner, getting the nose tucked in. I see also Michael Frey apparently on a 2.1 second improvement. I think he's invalidated that lap and skipped a chunk of the track at the same time. So not quite the alarming improvement that we would be thinking he may otherwise be from the Swiss driver. Sure, he'd be very happy if that was the Delta, but unfortunately, I think that's come as a slight consequence of a corner cut. Leon Burnt is pretty much marginal with his previous Delta. Is finding some time, though. And George Boothby, he is improving, but he has invalidated the lap. So has Teemu Karppinen, so they'll have to go again. Leon Burnt, though, as he comes towards the line, it was a 56.345, moves his way up into P8, just 0.003 of a second behind Eric Del Fanta. And it really goes to show the pace and performance, especially of Luke Whitehead, Nicholas Huben as well, because all of those cars from P3 down to almost just the tail end of the top 10, all within about a tenth, with Luke Whitehead with a 10.5 advantage at the front of the pack. A lot of invalidated laps as it stands. We've also got this man, number 27 of Michael Moning, who I believe last week took his best ever finish. The American driver finishing inside of the top 5. Did a fantastic job, had a lot of support in the chat as well. And he is looking pretty handy once again behind the wheel of that Mustang. He is sitting as currently the... Let's have a little bit of a look. So he is the third fastest Mustang in the server as it stands at the moment. So a pretty good effort from him, and only just a tenth of a second away from the likes of George Boothby, who can always pretty much guarantee is likely to give you the best benchmark of pace. Luke Whitehead, though, will not be out on another lap. So that is his qualifying over. He has laid down the benchmark. No 55s for him. 56.022. Michael Moning actually finds a chunk of time in the final part of the lap. A 56.225 goes up into the top 3. A fantastic effort from the number 27 car. I'm sure that will get the heart rates of those cheering on the American driver going in the chat there. Nicholas Huben bails to the pits as well. So your front row as it stands is Luke Whitehead and Nicholas Huben. No further improvements from him. Michael Moning continuing on, though. Who knows what this man can do? He's only a couple of tenths away from pole position as it stands. Dialed in with that Mustang very nicely. Marco Schade comes across the line. He finds a tenth of a second, and with that goes into the top 10. Have to see if he continues on. Looks like he is going to. Some more to come from him. Michael Mones just brought the yellow flag, so it won't be any higher than top 3 for the Mustang driver. But let's see what some of these other cars can bring to the table. Teemu Karppinen and George Boothby still out on track. A few cars very close with their previous lap times. Aidan Walsingham as well. He's coming through Stoke Corner now. And George Boothby has improved. He did improve by a couple of thousands, but not enough to move his way up the order. Teemu Karppinen then. Let's see what the Bentley driver can look to achieve here. He's on the front row last time around. Leon Burnt as well, actually moving pretty quickly. He was briefly a tenth of a second up on his Delta, and he's still got half a lap to go. I tell you what, alarm bells, though, for Amadeo Castorino right now down in P12. Not what he would have wanted, especially when there are Aston Martins currently sitting on the front row of the grid. Aidan Walsingham is finding lap time in that Veloce Esports Mustang. That could definitely be a contender for the top 5 by the end of this session, as is Leon Burnt finding time as well. Philip Menard, the pole sitter from last time out, is also finding time down in P15 as it stands, but could look to get his way towards the pointy end of the grid. What's it going to be for Timo Karppinen? Is it going to be another front row start? And the answer is no, he didn't quite manage to convert it at the end of the lap. Aidan Walsingham now heading towards the line. It's going to be a close one here, marginal on the Delta. Not sure he's quite got enough to improve position. Philip Menard is looking very quick, though, in the other Mustang. Aidan Walsingham does improve just a smidge. What's Philip Menard going to look to do as well? Where can he find himself? P3 at the death of it for Philip Menard. And I saw a little bit of a celebratory wiggle there in that one. I think very happy to get himself up the order in the closing moments of qualifying. I'm sure much to the pain of the Michael Moning supporters, who drops to P4, but still a stellar qualifying from the American driver. And look at that. I mean, the likes of, George Boothby, of course, like I say, winningest driver in Pro Series history. A driver that you can always count on to really extract a huge amount out of a car. And Philip Menard and Michael Moning have extracted a chunk more of performance from that Mustang. An incredible effort from the South African American drivers. Of course, when I say they've extracted a chunk more, we are talking hundreds of a second separating these drivers. But the standards are high in the world of the Case King Pro Series, and that is what we have come to know and love about this incredible championship. I cannot wait to see what it delivers in this one. But in the end, he didn't need the final attempt, because Luke Whitehead goes to pole position once more and said he was looking in fine form. He's delivered, as we so often have seen him do in the past. And he'll be looking to very much try to continue that trend as we head into the race. See if he can pull away at the start. Nicholas Huben and Philip Menard, 2 cars behind, that are going to be very handy in terms of straight line speed. So it's not going to be an easy getaway for Luke Whitehead. So we'll have to see how he gets on. But your grid looks like so. Luke Whitehead then adds another pole position to that ever-growing tally as Nicholas Huben makes up the front row again. Of course, formidable in the closing stages of the race at the season opener. And once again, looking to try to strike for a race-winning opportunity. Philip Menard and Michael Moning make up the second row of the grid in those Mustangs, with Aidan Walsingham the lead of the Veloce Esports Mustangs. The number 7 car came himself up to P5 at the end. Timo Karppinen makes it into the third row of the grid. Not quite the performance we saw from him in qualifying like at Suzuka, but maybe if he can keep it a little bit safer in the opening lap, he'll keep those hopes alive of finishing on the podium, maybe even on a race win alive for a bit longer. George Boothby and Grantas Correcas make up the fourth row of the grid, with Marco Schade of number 25 Honda. And Get Quick E-Racing did find some pace in the closing stages, whilst the championship leader, Leon Burnt, in the number 29 car, starts down in P10, but that is a car that could move through the order, especially if we do have some mixed conditions. Eric Del Fanta, the season opener winner, the Italian driver, who still sits inside the top 5. He's in P11 with Jade Hutchison, the Canadian, in the Nissan GTR. Great to see that car in the field once again. We didn't have it for the greatest amount of time last week. Hopefully it'll stick around just a tad longer. Amadeo Castorina, the reigning champion, starts P13 ahead of Jarnier. P14 for him. A solid qualifying effort from the number 5 car in the server. Carniter in the number 30. He starts in P15, with Lucas Roda starting P16 in the number 23 Aston Martin, just ahead of his teammate Sebastian Zahenna. So these two absolutely tied together in qualifying, more ways than one, all the way to the end of that session. Michael Frey starts in P18, despite that rather alarming delta that we saw at one point in the session. He sits just inside of the top 20, with Valentin Baharia sitting behind him, and Albin Matson the next of our Ford Mustangs. Norita for Nitro Racing. He starts in P21, ahead of Florian Duakop, a man who has had a bit of a topsy-turvy time. Of course, looked so good at the Nordschleife at the end of last season. Looked pretty handy at Watkins Glen as well, but on both occasions, the race win slipping through his fingers at the closing stages of the race, as I've got a notification for somebody being in pit lane. That's not looking too good. We'll have to see if that does come to fruition. Janis Reinders, Cody Sherritt, and Marco Bischoff make up your positions to P25 in the server, with Jan Philipp Nuremberg starting P26. And he'll be followed up by the next of the Ferraris, Jentel van Thielen in the number 31 car. Lauren Prima in the number 33 Ford. He will start just ahead of the German driver of Max Florenz in the Mercedes. Not too many Mercedes in the field for this evening, but 29th position for the German driver, with Samir Foch, a rather distinctive livery. I'm sure you'll be able to spot it over the course of the race. He starts in P30, with Tommy Rozier, the Frenchman, starting in 31st position, with Fabrizio Campanella, the Italian driver, in that Lamborghini, starting in 32nd place. Valentin Goppelt, the number 38 car, he starts in 33rd, with Dennis Wietschorker in the Aston Martin. He will start in 34th position for the German driver. Next over Genesis Esports cars, next over couple, Abba Santaba starts in 35th place, with Eric Muxa starting in 36th. In the BMWs, not too many BMWs in the server. My goodness, how times have changed. We've gone from times of every car being a Porsche now, and then we did have a wave of BMWs at one point in time. Now there's just simply a handful of them around. Luke Addison and Daniel Sola make up the 19th row of the grid, and David Rodriguez starts in 39th position, ahead of our last driver in the field, last but certainly not least, Konstantin Soldatov, who will round out that 40th position and spot. So drivers making their way around the circuit. Currently with Nicholas Huber showing up as being in that P1 spot. Not quite so convinced about that. I think Luke Whitehead might have something to say after that hard-earned pole position in the race. You can see, as it stands right now, dry conditions for the foreseeable future, but who knows how that could play out over the course of the race. Silverstone and the British weather, well known for throwing things into a little bit of disarray from time to time, and the poll. So there was a poll produced there to see who were your bets on in terms of your race winner, and it was a pretty short-lived poll by the looks of it. From what I can tell, the number one answer being another driver. Well, that narrows it down. Fantastic effort from everybody there in that one. Cheers and supports for Michael Moaning, Tupa Carpenter. Also, as clarification there. So it was Carnater and Noah Reeder sitting in pit lane. So I'm not quite sure what happened to them. Odd situation. Not sure if they missed the gridding time to get underway for the formation lap, or what has quite happened there. I'm not quite sure. White has qualified 3 times on pole position when he was number 3, and 3 times he has won that race. So all the 3s for Luke Whitehead, but he'll be certainly looking to try to see if he can make it a 4th win in terms of that tally and breaking that little trio of statistics. Kylo Ever, of course, our statistician, and bringing us all these wonderful facts and figures that add to the incredible world that is the Case King Pro Series. As they round their way through the final corner, your front row made up by Luke Whitehead and Nicholas Huben. You'd have to expect that Porsche to be pretty handy off the start. The flat sits, torque and power is mighty, but has got some very menacing looking Mustangs in the form of Philip Menard and Michael Moaning behind as well, so it could be an interesting one, but we're going to find out for 90 minutes of racing here at Silverstone for the 3rd round of the Case King Pro Series. Who's going to get the jump off the line? That is cars away, and it's a great start to launch immediately from Luke Whitehead. Immediately heads towards the outside line, in towards Cops Corner, and storms into the lead, but in hot pursuit already is Nicholas Huben, and some battling behind as well with the likes of Timu Carpenter and Aidan Walsing and Michael Moaning, all scrapping for positions. They go through Magnus and Beckers. Timu Timo Carpenter just about holds on to position there and keeps it in P5. And in fact, gains a spot initially as they make their way on through. One car staying in the pits. That is Carl Nater. Noah Reader has got back out to the field as they snake their way on through. Jade Hutchinson going side by side with the reigning champion. Timo Carpenter under pressure from Walsingham. He's sent towards the outside line. We'll see how all the battles look to play out. No one can make it stick there initially. What about the rest of them as they head through there as Marco Schada sweeps around the outside? Also saw Jade Hutchinson having to be mindful of Jardier, who's trying to make his way up through the order. Leon Burns sweeps around the outside of the Honda, gets himself up a position as they all scrap away. That's Michael Frey and Lucas Roda in the background as well, having a side-by-side moment. It's going to get very busy in towards Abbey Curve. They go the Aston Martin, trying to be brave around the outside. He is brave, and the number 23 holds on to P15 as they chop and change direction. Michael Frey, poor line from him. The Honda of Florian Duacop might try to sweep around the outside if he can get a run, but it's covered off by the Porsche driver, who immediately, in actual fact, goes back on the attack of the Aston Martin in front as Castorino gets a position almost as Jardier fending for his life there on the outside line as we join on board, bouncing his way through the grass. Got to be careful of Jade Hutchinson as they sweep on through in towards Brooklyn as they go. He will tuck back under the rear wing of the Aston Martin. Hey, but that got a little bit spooky for my liking, as meanwhile, Jas Reinders and Sebastian Zehen, the Ford versus Aston Martin side by side on the exit of Luffield. It's a tricky one to make stick as they continue on through. We'll go on board with Marco Bischoff, who has a great view of these two side by side in towards Cops Corner. They go inside line for the Aston Martin, gives the track position. How much of a switchback has the Mustang of Reinders got? It was a pretty good run, and the torque of our Mustang is just monumental. They'll continue to be side by side, outside to inside, but the Mustang, can he get the job done, especially with the assistance of Marco Bischoff, who tries to capitalize, a two-time Pro Series champion, sticking his nose in. He will get the slipstream of the fellow Mustang, although he's been squeezed onto the grass there. Almost contact between the pair of them as they head on down towards Stowe Corner. I need to also have a look up here as well, because the battle for the lead is most definitely on. Luke Whitehead just about holding on to position, but it's Nicholas Uman under pressure from Philip Manar as well as they scrap away through the club chicane. They do stay as they were as Marco Bischoff launches the attack down the inside, makes his way past the Aston Martin, who could concede a position a moment. He holds on, but what about the cars behind? Max Florence trying to stick his nose on the inside. I can see that coming from a mile away. Big contact. Florence almost up and over the Mustang into the sidewall as well, and big heavy impact on the main start-finish straight for the alternative layout around here. Noah Reader picks up a couple of freebies. Thank you very much, lads, and continues on. But my goodness, very busy stuff there as Aidan Walsingham and Timo Carpenter once again scrapping away. He's barely ahead with separating them as they went on through down towards the back straight. And my goodness, this is some very intense battling. We are less than 5 minutes into this race as they go on through Brooklyn, squeezed towards the outside. Tricky stuff through there, but they continue on as they were. But Luke Whitehead definitely under a bit of pressure. He has found a little bit of extra time now. Half a second is the margin that he has over Nicholas Uman. Sets the fastest lap of the race by a tenth or so, although George Boothby, several cars actually lapping quicker further down the order. So these guys very close on race pace. Going to keep it interesting as we progress on through this one. Also very close with the likes of Tommy Rozier, Fabrizio Campanella, as they look to try to hunt down Lorene Prima in the number 33 Mustang. And actually, I do apologise for the slightly bouncy nature of some of these cars. That is my Wi-Fi not doing me any sort of positive service whatsoever. But we will continue on. Keep in tune with the action. Hopefully all will be resolved this time next week. But as maybe it's actually a bit of a combo effect in that front. Yes, unfortunately, for some reason I have Wi-Fi but no Ethernet. Don't ask me why. The wonderful world of technology that we live in, eh? But we will continue on and see how the race progresses. Luke Whitehead, he really does seem like he's under pressure from Nicholas Uman with that Aston Martin locked under the rear wing of the Porsche. Is finding a great deal of pace. Slipstream almost contact in the braking zone there, and Nicholas Uman, he looks fired up. And Whitehead, he is struggling somewhat by the looks of it. It's not often that we see him looking like the weaker of two cars when they go toe-to-toe, but Nicholas Huben is looking very quick right now, and Philip Menard not too far behind. Same goes for Michael Moning, who right now is continuing on from what was already a brilliant qualifying session from him. That's absolutely... We head on through Luffield once again, trying to optimize that line on to the start-finish straight. Some chopping and changes of position further down the order as well. Oh dear. As Santama trying to hold on to that one. David Rodriguez trying desperately hold on to that, although that was Narita getting into the thick of the action, trying to go around the outside as they head in towards Woodcuts, and the Mustang just has so much horsepower. The BMW doesn't even bother trying to fight through there. Into Cop's corner they go. He gets the job done, and in hot pursuit as well. Konstantin Soldatov now trying to go for a move up the inside in towards Magnussen. Beckett's the Mustang looks like he may get the job done. There's a little bit of contact. He does get sent in towards the grass. He rejoins the circuit. They continue on. Narita may actual fact get another couple of positions here. Oh, there's big contact there, and the Ferrari sent flying into the wall. Heavy damage on the front end of the car. And whilst unfortunately with my connection to the server, the netcode is looking a little bit dubious, that without a doubt, that was heavy impact and a slam across the front nose of that car. And yeah, so much murder in the opening part of this race. Meanwhile, Noah Ida has progressed once more, got his way past Konstantin Soldatov. Probably lost a chunk of momentum after wiping out the Ferrari. Have to see what the stewards have to say on that front as we continue in this race. I am going to just try a small adjustment here. Let's see whether or not if I change the bitrate of the stream, if I can save a little bit of bandwidth for the server potentially. The video quality may go down a smidge, but I'm just wondering if perhaps it will enable us to have some slightly more fluid racing. If it makes no difference, we'll just maintain the rather odd-looking netcode, but we'll keep it in high resolution. Luke Whitehead then still leads ahead of Nicholas Huben and Philip Menard, who are still locked in a hot pursuit. Michael Moning not too far behind, has got a good couple of car lengths between himself and Teemu Karppinen, who has been able to keep Aidan Walsingham behind for the time being as they continue to push on. Only 8 minutes of this race so far, and the lap times are very quick from the cars behind. Michael Moning almost with the fastest lap time of the session, but not to be outdone. The other Ford Mustang of Aidan Walsingham, the Veloce car, 57.147. Other than Teemu Karppinen, very close between everybody inside of the top six, separated by just over a tenth between each of those cars, as Nicholas Huben once again, the camera angle not really helping us here, trying to go for a move around the outside, looking for an opportunity. Luke Whitehead keeping it all together, but he has got a lot of pressure in towards the club chicane. Nicholas Huben trying to someone down the inside. Philip Menard watching on, seeing if he can find opportunity in all of this. Over and under for Huben. That's a tricky one. We've already seen it results in contact so far. Will they make it through cleanly this time? They do, just about. But in towards Abbey Curve, Luke Whitehead trying to squeeze the Aston Martin towards the inside line. He'll open up the run to the outside line. These two going toe-to-toe. Philip Menard trying to find an opportunity and a way on through. In towards next left king. Where to go? Again, place your money on how this one's going to fare. Luke Whitehead, though, surely with the inside line. In towards the next corner. He can secure track position, but it's very dicey through here. The flag 6 torque and a little bit of squeeze on the exit keeps the Porsche in front, but it is absolutely game on between these guys, as look at that, it's bunched up everybody. Teemu Karppinen back in the fight. Michael Moning trying to go for the podium. Huben tries to sweep around the outside in the Aston Martin. Can he keep his nose in it for Luffield? He might be able to as well. He has. He's got to keep it himself honest there, and Luke Whitehead wide on the exit, and I think, has Huben got it done? Not quite yet. Michael Moning through into third, and Teemu Karppinen's capitalised on that as well. He's making his way past in towards P4, but the battle for the lead. Nicholas Huben surely with the inside line heading in towards Cop's corner has got the job done, and the German driver storms into the lead as Aidan Walsingham with Philip Menard tumbling down the order. He's going to lose 1, 2 as well, with the Honda trying to make a move in towards Magnussen Beckett. Let's see how we fare. Philip Menard, terrible lap from him, losing 4 positions in just a matter of corners. But Luke Whitehead, he fought valiantly to hold on to that position there. And an absolutely incredible battle. And now, here's the problem, because that car in front is going to be pretty handy in a straight line, but I'll tell you what, I'm sure to the joy of everyone watching in the chat as well. Michael Moaning in the number 27 car, that Ford Mustang, as we go skating, as they glide their way gracefully and angelically. Michael Moaning has so much top end in that Mustang that if he gets locked under the rear wing of Luke Whitehead, he could seriously be contesting for that P2 spot. And I'm sure with all the willpower and the cheers in the chat as well, that he'll be looking, trying to put on something special. It's been a great race so far from him. Never has been on the podium team with Carpen, and we saw him run wide there in qualifying. Doing it again. Now Adrian Walsingham trying to outbrake him around the outside into Village Corner. Will get the squeeze. Nowhere to go there. Will instead have to try to set the run up out of the loop. Cannot do it, as meanwhile, Grant Correcas and Philip Menard side by side now. Philip Menard really tumbling down the order. I don't think he's got any damage, but has had an absolute shocker of a couple of laps as he's got Leon Burns, the championship leader, getting involved in this as well. Grant Correcas goes up a position, does get the job done, but the South African, an awful couple of laps for the Mustang driver, the man that finished P1 on track last week, got a penalty for contact with Leon Burns, if memory serves. And unfortunately, as it stands right now, not having the most fantastic of times. Luke Whitehead, though, you can see, determined as ever. He has not let Nicholas Huben get away. Sometimes it can be a little bit easy to follow, and then once that car behind gets into the slipstream, and especially if they've been overtaken, the frustration and pure will to try to stick with that lead car can keep them in closer contention. Battles everywhere you look. You guys voted for Silverstone. I hope you're enjoying the action. Apologies for the slight skating, but I'll tell you what, we've got some fantastic racing on our hands for the next hour and 17 minutes, because here comes Jardier trying to make his way around the reigning champion and the season opener winner into All Stoke Corner they go. Who's going to come out on top of that one? Jardier sweeps around the outside, but he's squeezed on too much. Oh, dear, there's contact, there's secondary contact, I think, as well, as Hutchinson tried to take avoiding action, and he did get collected. So Jardier loses some positions, and with that, so does the Nissan of Jade Hutchinson. And for the car that is kind of fighting a losing battle in a grid like this, given its slightly older nature, the BOP not in its favour, he's already been driving the wheels off that machine, and that is gutting to see. Nothing that he could do about that one. We'll try to see if we can catch it on the replay. It might be a bit of a wonky replay, but we'll see what it does. Oh, we've caught it too soon. That's disappointing. We'll go see what the excursion onto the grass was like as he tried to bounce his way back to the circuit. And seeing all of those cars sweep on by. And, well, I'm not quite sure if it was an Aston kiss. It was more of a Aston thump in the face from Jardier there. I mean, of course, the secondary contact was very, very unfortunate. After the initial contact with Amadeo put Jardier into a bit of a moment. And then after that, the pendulum effect on the car, just unable to do anything there. We have entered the shadow realm for a split second. Hopefully we will rejoin with our cars in just a moment. Meanwhile, whilst we disappear through the centre of the earth, there we go, we will also have a bit of a roundup of the stewards' inquiries as well, and try to see what these are looking like as it stands at the moment. We've had a 5-second time penalty for the number 26 car. That belongs to... who is that in the server? That is someone that I can't see. So I think that may have been one of our retirees from the session. A warning for the 39, warning for the number 4, warning for the 26 again. So they've certainly been in the wars. We've got some other penalties being decided and others under investigation. So we'll have to wait and see as this race continues. Only 15 minutes of action. Oh, thank you, Carlo. The observer, the number 20, that's Sebastian Zehenna in the number 26 car is the driver that has got those warnings and the 5-second penalty as well. But Nicholas Huben, in the meantime, after getting himself into P1, has started to make a bit of a breakaway from Luke Whitehead, and he's over a second up the road. An immense amount of pace on board that Aston Martin. As meanwhile, the battles inside the rest of the top four certainly alive as ever. As we continue on, seeing how these drivers are going to get on, as more and more of my services seem to be failing by the second. I'm not quite as much in control of my overlays as I was about 30 seconds ago. I think doing that replay that seemed to murder things to a small extent. So we will try to keep up with the fights as we go. But, and if need be, we may do a little bit of a rejoin in the server if I do end up being completely hijacked by everything. But my goodness, so far, only 60 minutes of action down in this race. Positions have chopped and changed up and down the order time and time again already. And it has been an absolute fantastic showing from all of these cars so far. And all these drivers putting on an immense bit of action. And we look towards the weather as well. Nothing particularly changing in that situation either. So, as of right now at least, by the time they get towards pit stop territory, it's not necessarily looking like that we are going to be heading in towards any rainy conditions. But when we have any rain that strikes near the end of the race, we will have to wait and see on that front. Continuing on, I must admit, I do seem to have rather got stuck. I mean, we are looking at the race leader, which just as well. Oh, okay, there we go. We're going to have to do a little bit of a prediction, I think, in terms of where we need to be looking. But I think we're looking in a pretty good place right now. I'm sure the chat will agree. Michael Moaning sitting in P3, and he is in the thick of the action. Luke Whitehead, as it stands right now, dropping away. Last lap around, he was half a second slower than Nicholas Huben. I think perhaps with these temperatures, I mean, the track is at 25. It's not the most insanely hot conditions for the Porsche to be contesting with, but it does just seem that car is maybe just having a stronger drop-off in performance relative to that immense one-lap pace that we saw the British driver put together as the front-engined machines of Huben in the Aston Martin, Moaning in the Mustang, and Karppinen in the Bentley right now are really showing some extra pace. Huben, though, again, just so quick. Walsingham on a very quick lap last time around as well. He is currently the man who has the fastest lap in the server. So there's some good pace inside that Mustang as well. The number 7 car is a bit of dust kicked up by Luke Whitehead. He is definitely pushing. He's struggling as well. And you can see that Karppinen starting to get a little bit more hunted down now by Aidan Walsingham in that Mustang, looming around the gearbox of the Grip Hacks engineering car, starting to become a little bit more of a threat to the number 16. As we hear the popping and banging of that gorgeous V8 blasting its way around here. The Mustang sounds pretty great as well. I mean, to us, nearly every V8 on the planet does, but certainly these Meteor torquier sounding engines have a special place, I think, in a lot of people's hearts. As Karppinen again, a little bit wider through Abbey than the other cars around him, and Walsingham just able to stay a bit tighter, smarten up those lines, take a bit less out of the tyres, and as the stint progresses, they'll all start to come further into his favour. Looking at the position deltas, it does look like biggest mover on the grid as it stands at the moment. Florian Duagop up 7 positions, Marco Bischoff up 7 positions as well. So opportunities for them to potentially make their way towards the top 10 if they continue that sort of momentum. Oh, steady on as we go sliding once again, as we are certainly having a time with the various onboards that we've got going on. But once again, apologies. But hopefully, fingers crossed, these guys keeping us entertained still with some incredible racing action as we stay in the thick of each of these fights. It is very close together with our top 5 as they head on towards Magnussen Beckett's once more. And a 15-second time penalty for Max Florens. That was for the instant out of the club chicane onto the Hamilton straight. And, of course, after collecting that car. Oh my days. After collecting that car, heavy impact into the barrier, and 2 races rather abruptly brought to an end as further penalties, I think, have been also issued. 5-second time penalty for number 32 car in the server. And as we have a look up and down the order, that's another car that I can't see. That could, though, just be me being blind. That wouldn't be the first time over the course of this race, but I must admit it's not one that I can see in the field, so maybe another retiree of the session, but that is it in terms of penalties I can see that have been dished out so far. Here we go again. Michael Moaning now actually starting to come under a little bit of pressure from Teemu Karppinen. The Bentley driver starting to refine a bit of form. These gaps amongst the top 3 stabilising somewhat, and then it's this battle from P3 down to P7. Just a few tenths of a second separating each of them. 32 was Daniel Solon. Thank you very much, Bradbury, in the chat. That answers that question as Teemu Karppinen trying to send one up the inside in towards Brookman's corner, as maybe a little bit of an ambitious one. Of course, it's slightly difficult in our current situation to judge exactly what the distance between some of these cars are, but hopefully they have a better picture of all of that than we do, as Nuremberger, I think, has made up a position, but unfortunately I imagine by the time that I manage to navigate to it, they will be over and done with, and we may end up missing the fight that we see just outside of the podium positions. So we follow along once again in towards Magnus and Beckett's. Nicholas Huben, that gap has stabilised now, so, you know, last lap, Luke Whitehead was actually the fastest car out of the top 5. Grant Karekas and, actually, in fact, it was Marco Schade down in P10 that was fastest car inside the top 10. Leon Burnt not too far behind. Grant Karekas, Phil Menard moving quickly as well. Look at that. Your top 10. So Eric Del Phantom, you see at the back of that train over there, that's P11. So all the way, more or less, from P2 to P11, there is barely a few car lengths between each of these drivers as they continue on. We're 23 minutes into this race. We've had some drama at several points so far, needless to say, continuing on in rather different ways as we continue to see how this race pans out, both in terms of on-track action and in terms of technical Wi-Fi shenanigan issues. But one way or another, we're still getting our money's worth. That's a mistake from Teemu Karppinen, and that's not netcode. But the Bentley, with its rather absorbent suspension, making it a relatively easy excursion, actually, through on the exit of Abbey. Then manages to keep himself more or less into fighting contention, but gives a bit of breathing space to Michael Moaning as Aidan Walsingham smells blood, as does Grant Karekas and Philip Menard, who are closing in on George Boothby. George Boothby again in this Mustang, maybe not quite as dialed in as we would typically expect for the winningest driver in the Case King Pro Series, as he is certainly being hunted down by the Ferrari and fellow Mustang. Philip Menard, of course, had those disastrous couple of laps where he was just tumbling down the order. Maybe starting to find a bit more of a spring in his step. Tyres in a window where that car is nicely balanced as well. We'll have to see how it continues to play out. Meanwhile, as we see these battles progress, if you are enjoying the incredible action that we have going on the circuit, I do apologise for the connection issues. Hopefully, this will be a thing of the past by the time we go racing again next week. All should hopefully be resolved by that point. But if you are enjoying the action and the wonderful world of the Case King Pro Series, seeing the best of the best on the LFM platform, going toe-to-toe and having this incredible action, do consider giving the channel a follow and keeping in tune with this championship as we progress on over the course of this season. It is going to be a mega one, I am absolutely certain. Of course, always putting on a fantastic show every week we go racing, as we blast on around into Abbey once again. Phil Bernard skating around the edges of the AstroTurf, having to be careful not to dip a wheel in the gravel there, because you can end up going one of two ways. You can either understeer off into the distance, find yourself in a similar position to Teemu Karppinen trying to keep it all together, Or you can have that huge oversteer moment we saw a few years ago now in Formula 1. It was Lance Stroll had a bit of an awkward time at the start of a race and came flying through the pit lane, much to the displeasure of those that were exiting the pit lane at the time. Bit of a scary moment with that one. Not quite as scary, though, as some of the shenanigans that we are seeing in the server here. We are there, or, they're just about. We're there in spirit in terms of the action that we are seeing. But Karekas trying to continue applying that pressure in the number 9 car, the Lithuanian driver. So he loses out to these Mustangs. You see how that gap has shifted, with Philip and I both closing towards the Ferrari, and the Mustang just in front, with my timing board actually not quite being the most helpful now either. I think it's Aidan Walsingham that Grant Karekas is sitting behind, George Boothby that is sitting behind and gains it all back through Magnus and Beckers. There you go, similar story as well for Leon Byrne, trying to hunt down Philip Menard, but it's just not enough, nowhere near enough overspeed in order to have a hope of being able to get the job done and get a position sorted. The only Merc in a row, and unfortunately, so the only Mercedes was, I believe, Max Florence, and he made contact with another car. I do unfortunately forget who. I think, was it Cody Sherritt? I think it may have been. Or was he in the pit lane from the start? He may have been in the pit lane from the start. I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, there was heavy contact with one of the other cars in the server, and unfortunately got a penalty. I think then retired from the session from that point onwards. That's only one car taken out in that incident, Eric, to answer your question in the chat. But from the steward's point of view, anyway, it was seemingly a case of him being responsible for the contact. It was very heavy race-ending damage as well. Also, of course, lap 1, very busy time of the race as well. So sometimes things looked at a little bit more harshly in terms of the danger they cause to the rest of the grid. But the stewards have numerous more camera angles, certainly better views of the incident than what we've had over the course of this race so far. That I do still very much appreciate. Almost 200 of you still sitting here with me and joining in for this crazy action in more ways than one. We, of course, also streaming over to YouTube as well, and that does mean that you can catch up with everything that the Pro Series has had to offer week in, week out, as Florian Duakop, I think, has just made the move on Michael Frey a bit further down the order. The Honda continuing his charge through the field. 8 positions gained for Florian, as the top 5 once again starting to close the gaps to one another. We will start to have a bit of a look towards that. Nicholas Huben again managing to just eke out that margin just a smidge. Meanwhile, Luke Whitehead coming in under increasing pressure from Michael Moning, Teemu Karppinen, and Aidan Walsingham. Aidan Walsingham seems like the lead of the Veloce Mustangs today. And there you have it. There's the fight for those other podium positions. Luke Whitehead managing to use that Porsche to its advantage. Little bit of an excursion onto the grass. Keeps it all together. Michael Moning, you can see, gaining a chunk of time. Carries a rather wider line through the second apex, but I think that's just trying to fill the mirrors of Luke Whitehead, who I'm sure will be very much aware that if he makes one small mistake, that there are several cars ready and waiting to pounce behind. Apparently more penalties have come on through. Number 5 of Jardier, a 15-second time penalty for causing a collision. I can see why, unfortunately, on that front. Of course, the driver so often has moved his way up through the order and always wishes for a clean, fun, fair race. Unfortunately, in these sorts of races where the margins are so small between cars, it can sometimes go wrong. And I think, at least from the perspective we saw, it did look like Jardier maybe squeezed a bit too ambitiously on Amadeo into the apex. And then that contact probably would have gone to no further action if it had just been Jardier that went off the circuit. Unfortunately, he did collect Hutchinson, who was an innocent bystander in the process. And so, for that, he has received the penalty. So, a little bit of an unfortunate one by circumstance, but another one to learn from, move on from, and continue as we Let's see how the race plays out. We make our way just past the first half an hour. An hour of racing left to go, and no rain on the way. It's a very low wind as well, so we're not exactly going to be seeing particularly dynamic conditions. But I'll tell you what, we could be seeing a lot of fireworks kicking off in this fight for the top 5. Look at this. After half an hour of racing, our positions 2 to 5 covered by barely a second. As meanwhile, Nicholas Huber just continuing to pull away in that Aston Martin. Fantastic consistency and pace from the German driver. But meanwhile, as Luke Whitehead finds pace between Stowe and the club chicane, this final part of the lap, the run through Abbey Curve, and then the run towards Brooklands through Copse Corner, that's where the likes of the Mustangs are very, very strong, and where Michael Boney, I'm sure, senses his opportunity. And that's the difference. Michael Boney almost doesn't have to worry in quite the same way about making a mistake under pressure, because even lordy, we'll hopefully come back on track in a moment. Because even if he does get a bit wrong, he's probably got enough top end to keep it all together in the grand scheme of things. Whereas Luke Whitehead, if he does run wide, if he hits a curb a little bit awkwardly, something like that, one way or another, he can find himself in a spot of bother. And so we will have to see how he tries to contest with that. Look at those deltas. Less than half a second between every car between P2 and P8. Absolutely extraordinary stuff from these guys. This is why we love the Case King Pro Series. It delivers incredible action every single time that we go racing. And now then, Michael Moning just in hot pursuit of the car in front, but just unable to make his way on through. We'll go for an onboard of the number 27 car, who's hunting around the gearbox of the Porsche in front. He's got to be careful of Teemu Karppinen. Lord only knows where we are now, as Teemu Karppinen, well, looked like he'd dived this Mustang about 17 times in space of 2.5 seconds. Thankfully, I don't think it was quite anywhere near as that dramatic. But if we go back to slightly more normal pictures for just a brief moment, you can see the Mustang closing that distance, applying the pressure to Luke Whitehead, who goes a little bit wide. Michael Moning can't quite launch enough out of the exit of Village Corner to sneak the nose of that Mustang up the inside. Fantastic sounds on board this Mustang. And Grant Korekis in the background of this fight. He gains time over the likes of Walsingham in front, but then he gets to these straight lines and he just can't do it in the Ferrari. Through Brooklands they go, through into Lovefield. The Porsche, this is where it needs to make the gaps count. You can see Luke Whitehead, I don't think you need the best net code in the world. No, they had a little bit of a squiggle on the exit of that turn. That won't be helping his rear tyres. See Michael Moning continuing on that V8. It's just a little bit of that fantastic, unique turn in there. It screams its way around the circuit. A bit uncharacteristic for a V8 powered car. That's absolutely wonderful though. And 0.3 of a second is the margin. Now the question is, how good of an exit can Michael Moning get as they continue to plough on? Seeing what he can do. He's gaining in the slipstream. Does he fancy an opportunity? Oh, and a little bit of a half defense from Luke Whitehead then. Just not quite confident that he was going to be able to hold that one, so he had to deter the Mustang just about enough. But look at that, Nicholas Huber, the only car inside the top 5 to be lapping in the 57s, 57.8 last time around. But some impressive times outside the top 10 as well. 57.9 from Leon Byrne, 57.9 from Marco Charlotte, Del Fante, Amadeo Castorino. So there are cars further down the order doing the same sort of pace as this split. And Joliet is indeed in this split. He's unfortunately had a little bit of an incident earlier on in this race. Came together with Amadeo Castorino and then as a result ended up having a secondary collision with Jade Hutchinson, and that sent him tumbling down the order, and with a 15-second time penalty to boot as well. So tricky stuff for the smiling streamer, as pit window has now opened. So that enables some opportunities to start to come the way of maybe these cars that have got a little bit stuck behind one another, and see whether or not they can do anything on strategy, because we saw George Boothby open up his opportunities last time out, and Philip Mannar looks like he has immediately come into the pits. So the driver that had a terrible start, terrible sort of lap 3 or 4, whenever it was, and went from battling inside of the top 3, has now headed to pit lane. Now finds himself in a position where he's trying to undercut these cars in front, hoping especially that they will scrap away and may open up some opportunities for the Mustang driver to make his way through, and haunted absolutely indeed, as unfortunately, as we continue to bounce our way around, the overlay having a time of his life, as we continue to see how these drivers will hold up, how my internet will hold up for the day. Like I say, unfortunately, it's well, it is indeed a rare occurrence with this an unusual scenario for me. Last week, unfortunately, it did actually hold up relatively well, apart from a couple of dropouts. So we haven't had quite the same dropouts. I probably shouldn't have said that. I need to touch wood. But that said, it wasn't quite what we're seeing this evening, but it is certainly keeping the action interesting, as meanwhile, a bit of a dive under brakes from Moaning hasn't quite come off, and Timo Carpenter, oh, he's clipped the curb on the inside. You can see, trying to set up that run was the Mustang driver, but again, just unable to make it stick there, as Moaning now under pressure in towards Brooklyn as they go, and it's bringing Aidan Walsingham into this fight as well. So the two Mustangs sandwiching the Bentley, each one of them with a V8, but some very different handling characteristics. We've already of course seen that the Mustang can be a little bit of a handful in certain situations. Certainly when it starts to rain, it's a platform that does begin to struggle. The Bentley similarly as well, after being so quick out at Suzuka, has run into strife when it's come to slower speed sections of the track as well. So certainly things to keep an eye on, opportunities for overtakes to be happening here as they continue to snake their way on through the order. And that is Timo Carpenter now actually coming under some serious pressure from Aidan Walsingham. You can see Walsingham launching an attack in the background, and I don't think there's anything that Timo Carpenter can particularly do about that one. He is trying to come back to the Mustang driver, but in the end, Walsingham gets the job done and gets himself up into P4. Good effort so far from the Mustang driver, of course, a race winner himself, and now sets off in charge. A rather unfamiliar face to many of those in this split. One a name that perhaps I wouldn't have expected to see too much up the order, but Michael Mooney, number 27 car, doing an astonishing job, both in last week's race and this week's. This time, 2 positions better, and crucially, a podium better than we saw at the last round at Suzuka. As now Karppinen trying to apply the pressure, sustain Walsingham's pursuit of Michael Moaning as best as he can, and try to contest towards those positions further up the order. We've also had now Florian Duicott find 9 positions in the server, as has Samir Foch further down in 21st position. So a couple of big movers. Meanwhile, Michael Moaning then comes into the pits as well as George Boothby. So strategic decisions coming on in about 5 minutes or so before the halfway point in the race. And that certainly could be an interesting one to keep an eye on and follow as time progresses. Aidan Walsingham, tidy line as he continues his pursuit. Florian Duicott, of course, now with certain cars coming into the pit, starts to kind of reshuffle the order just a tad. But Florian Duerkop is trying to make up for what's been a little bit of a tough couple of weeks. And right now, Lucas Roda in that number 23 CMRC Aston Martin is the car that is looking to try to hunt down. The Honda has pretty handy straight line speed, so it certainly does have tools underneath it to go for an overtaking opportunity, but sometimes it can be so tricky to make stick. Even if you get that overlap, you get that advantage, it's not always necessarily a guarantee of success when you're going for that move. And the Honda as well. The tricky one to know exactly where around the circuit it is going to be possible to make it stick, because it's a car that has good top end, so it naturally kind of encourages some of these late braking maneuvers or end of straight maneuvers, but at the same time, around certain circuits, it really can hold its own in terms of how it rotates through a corner. Maybe leans on its tyres a bit harder than some others, probably most similar to the Porsches of the likes of Luke Whitehead, for example, and he will come into the pit. So he does the opposite to Luke Whitehead, who decides to stay out. But we have had some reactions of drivers then in the field, and it will all come down to whether or not this undercut is working. Philip Minnaert, despite those issues earlier on in the race, the South African driver has got that gap to George Boothby down to around half a second. And I do believe there was a good couple of positions between them as well. So George Boothby having that one covered off. Good stop for Michael Moning as well. And Konstantin, that was Timo Karppinen coming into the pits. We'll see whereabouts he emerges. It's going to be pretty close, I think, with some of these cars in this group. But I think there's a very good chance that some of these cars do end up making their way on by, if not all of them. Timo Karppinen is about to emerge out of pit lane. There he is. And Michael Moning has got on through. But crucially for Timo Karppinen, he is not allowed through George Boothby and Philip Minnaert, who continue to try to close that gap. But that doesn't mean to say that he is safe in terms of losing much else in terms of position. Aidan Walsingham, of course, staying out. We'll have to see how his lap times fare. Those that have pitted, it was a 57.8 last time round. It's probably your best benchmark in terms of overall pace. But I have to admit, see Nicholas Huben, 57.8. Luke Whitehead, 58.1. Aidan Walsingham, 57.7. So, these fresh tyres, I'm not actually convinced making wonders of difference at the moment, but several drivers again looking to come into the pits and get the strategy change done and sorted early, as that is the likes of Castorino, Roda, Whitehead, Burnt, Huben and Frey that all come into pit lane, with Timo Karppinen trying to hold back the onslaught that is those following him, with George Boothby and Philip Minnaert especially being named there. Michael Moning extending his advantage in front of these cars. We'll see what the next laps are for each driver. I think it should be pretty even between them as Michael Moning heads towards the line. For him, it will be a 57.5, and for Timo Karppinen, who hasn't set a fully flying lap just yet, we admittedly will have to wait just another lap or so, although that's a busy point in the race, because there you have it. Luke Whitehead has been undercut by Michael Moning. And so the undercut, and that's going to be a very tricky position to try to recover there. So Michael Moning, a fantastic stint for him. He's kicked up the gravel, though, on the exit of Magnussen Beckers. He's got to stay calm here and allow his pace to do his thing. And the chat absolutely loving what the Mustang driver, the American driver, has been able to do so far this session. Nicholas Huben in control. And 4.5 seconds up the road as well. So gaining around 2 seconds or so over Luke Whitehead over the course of that stint. And that has just enabled the number 8 Aston Martin to run away up the order. And I have to admit, I mean, I'm not quite sure. I know the Aston Martin gets hampered somewhat in terms of pit lane as well. So that is extremely impressive within the context. I'm not quite sure about where the Ford Mustang and the Porsche sits in that as well. Of course, the Porsche, I think, quite commonly was a good pit stop for that car as well. And when you factor those style of things in, makes the undercut from Michael Moning ever more impressive. And yeah, absolutely time to run away as Porsche got some nice rear tyre spin on drop down. But yeah, the flat six power and torque, maybe not quite actually doing the favours of Luke Whitehead as he would have wanted. More cars come on into the pits. Walsingham, Carreras in as well. Where are they going to end up filtering on out? As you see, there was one of the cars. That was Aidan Walsingham, I believe. It's going to be actually very close between Aidan Walsingham and Luke Whitehead battling away for position. So head through Magnus and Beckett. It will be the Porsche that gets the job done. Those tyres being up a little bit further in temperature, but nose to tail formation has suddenly resumed. As you can see, we've got Walsingham under pressure now from Grant Carreras and Teemu Karppinen. The Bentley driver still hunting down the prospects of a podium here. And Grant Carreras launches an attacking opportunity. He's got to be careful not to make the gap too wide, as that's what's going to happen. Aidan Walsingham shoves it out the inside, as meanwhile Philip Menard looking to get involved as well, as we will look to try to see what he sees inside the cockpit of his car. In towards Abbey Curve. There or thereabouts. Through the next sequence. And trying to go really late on the brakes around the outside. He's trying to keep his foot in it. Oh, it's barely a gap on the inside. It's going to get very close, and it is close indeed. Little bit of contact on the exit as well. Oh, I think there was further contact there. As that was, excuse me, in actual fact, that was with George Boothby in all of that. So things certainly kicked off there. And George Boothby, not very happy about that one, I'm sure. And being rather shuffled forcefully out of the way. He continues on in the number 1 car. Of course, the numbers that you see on the cars, based upon the relative elo of the driver on the LFM platform system. And so the number 1 car in the server and number 1 car on the LFM platform as well, belonging to George Boothby. Of course, himself, Marco Bischoff, and Grant Carreras, I believe, have chopped and changed for that little milestone. I say that little milestone is one that takes an incredible amount of hard work and commitment to pull together. And so demonstrating why he has that, but maybe not quite the race that he would have wanted overall. We fly on through in towards Stowe Corner. Battles thing for position further up the order as well. Luke Whitehead will be frustrated to have lost that position to Aidan Walsingham. So I think we missed that in some of the other scrapping that we had kicking off there. The Porsche driver, of course, he was the pole sitter, then conceding positions through the undercut phase of the race. Tyre wear seemingly just a little bit more severe perhaps, and a bigger drop off in performance for this car. Number 3 car in the server. Under a great deal of pressure now from the Bentley of Teemu Karppinen as well. He's trying to see if he can find his way through. Top end speed in favour of both cars that sit in front and behind this Porsche. Is heading into Brooklands as they go again. This is where the Porsche tends to be strong, be handy through Luffield as well. clipping that first apex, using a little bit in the middle of the circuit before sweeping back down onto the second apex of the corner. You can see how nicely planted that Porsche is as Nicholas Huben sets a fast lap of the race of 57.065. And for comparison, Michael Moning, a pretty solid effort from him, but he's still 2/10 down on that pace from the Aston Martin that has leapt up into the lead and so far has not looked back since. You can see for just a split second him disappearing out towards the exit of Magnussen Beckett before most of the other cars have even had a chance to get into the sequence. A dominant performance so far from the German driver. He has fought for the championship towards the end of the season. On previous occasions, a bit of a showdown going into Monza. Think about 4 or 5 seasons ago. Hadn't won a race all season long in that campaign. It had always been about consistency for Nicholas Huben. As now, having been a race-winning challenger in the season opener, maybe not quite the race he would have wanted at Suzuka, on the basis that now they actually review that he wasn't in that race, so that doesn't really make too much of a difference. But certainly showing that when he is in the field and in the server, that he is here to fight and is here to contest for this championship indeed. Through the loop they look to go once again. These gaps having spread apart just a tad now, but as we look further down the order, George Boothby, Marco Schada and Leon Burnt having a bit of a busy time around the outside of the top 10. And welcome on in, Mr. Weller, joining in the chat as well. Good to have you here, buddy. And maybe not quite the most ideal of times for you to join the chat for the first time with some of the shenanigans we've got going on screen, but we do have some fantastic racing continuing on throughout the rest of this race. As Aidan Walsingham continuing to pick up the pace at 56.8, 4/10 quicker than anyone else up ahead. I'll tell you what, especially the gap to P2 to Michael Moning, for much of a displeasure of his fans sitting in the chat. That is a very easily surmountable gap over the course of the next few laps if Aidan Walsingham were to maintain that sort of level of pace. Even that would have Nicholas Huben sweating just a little bit. The German driver often so calm and cool under pressure. As meanwhile, someone else who has to remain calm under pressure is Philip Menard. He's got George Boothby hunting all over the back of the South African, who really has not been able to recover and rediscover that pace in the early stages of the race that we did see, as George Boothby continues to try to apply that pressure as we bounce around faster than a puck on an ice hockey table. Ice hockey table? Air hockey table. I don't think you have many ice hockey tables. But anyway, you know what I mean. That these guys certainly having a little bit of a time relative to my perspective in the server anyway, as they continue on. The number 1 car trying desperately to see if he can make his way up a position. George Boothby, if he does want to contest for this championship, he has to start banking in some of these higher point scoring positions, and right now just really is not finding an ability to do that on a consistent basis. And he has now got Marco Schada really applying the pressure in towards Brooklands Curve. Of course, George Boothby came back strong at Suzuka with the overcut strategy, found his way into those fights in the closing stages, but on average has not quite had the pace so far in the opening quarter of the season from what we would have expected from the man that is the winningest driver on the platform. And I can also tell you what, Leon Burnt, a 5-second time penalty for the number 29 car, your championship leader no less, unfortunately has found himself in a spot where that penalty is going to drop him down a good 3 or 4 positions. So the man that was Mr. Consistency so far this season and get himself into that championship leading position has unfortunately run into a bit of strife and found himself dropping down the order. Meanwhile, speaking of dropping down the order, Michael Moning, a horrific lap from the American driver that has seen him lose 0.8 of a second, and Aidan Walsingham, who was set very, very quick times over the last couple laps. Seems very dialed in at this stage of the race. Doesn't look like we'll have weather playing into effect until the end of the race. 30 minutes of clear weather again. Aidan Walsingham right now really hunting around the back of the American driver. If he can dispatch of the number 27 car swiftly, could he go on to have a think about the race win? He has won races in the Case King Pro Series before. It is not unfamiliar territory for the British driver, and certainly not for Veloce Esports, but he's got a bit of work to do, especially because that car in front, very even on pace and performance in the hands of a driver who has been performing well so far today and is going to be very quick in a straight line as well. So it's not going to be quite so simple to make his way past as it was perhaps for the likes of the Porsche of Luke Whitehead. But some of these fights further down the order, staying in fantastic close proximity between one another. Less than a second separating P8 to P11. Some other battles further on down as well. Jade Hunter's in actual fact on a pretty good recovery through the order. He's P27 at the moment, fighting for P26 of a Nissan driver, trying to see if he can do anything to move his way up. Does anyone manage to find an opportunity on this occasion? Bit of grass used by Michael Moning there as we continue on. The number 27 car trying to run away in towards Stowe Corner and having to keep that car behind. Number 27 trying to switch towards the inside line. That's not the camera I wanted. I mean, we're on board with Michael Moning. There's a beautiful face for those cheering and supporting him, but he is side by side right now with Aidan Walsingham on the exit of the club chicane, and Aidan Walsingham, I do believe, has got the job done and has got himself up into P2, and he has indeed as they head on through Abbey Curve. Hopefully when we get around the normal camera angle again, oh, this stream is going wonderfully, then we can perhaps even look for a replay any moment now. Although in actual fact, oh, there's a dive from Luke Whitehead. The camera, we should have stuck with it. The camera came good. Oh, bit of contact with Luke Whitehead there, and Michael Moning's in the grass. There goes the Bentley. We're in the pit lane for just a brief moment. Now we're back on the back straight, and unfortunately for Michael Moning, what was looking to be an absolutely incredible drive from the American driver, he has gone from P2 down to what is now net P5. Disappointment from the American's perspective, and certainly not what he would have wanted to have seen. What is going on? Well, unfortunately, well, for Michael Moning, what's going on is he's had a couple of bad corners and has been shuffled down the order. What's going on for me is I've been hijacked by my own internet and now can't change camera. There we go. We managed to get there eventually. I don't think we'll bother with a replay. Last time we did that, we ended up in the shadow realm for approximately half a minute. So I think we'll stay as we were with all of that. But more intense scrapping of position there. Michael Moning struggling through Maggots and Beckett's, and the cameraman has crashed. We sometimes do have the cameraman being a little bit ambitious of pointing us into the trees and not being the most helpful of individuals. On this particular occasion, I'll forgive him slightly, not quite his fault, but we did get rather stuck in the car. But thankfully, unfortunately not so much for Michael Moning, but in the end it did give us some interesting views of both Luke Whitehead and also Timo Karppinen making their way on through. Grant Correca's looking feisty at this point as well. And this Mustang just really not looking quite as hooked up as it once was, as that was the number 22, I think, of David Rodriguez, that has just retired to pit lane. Not quite sure what happened there. I thought I saw a car pretty far off into the distance on the exit of Copse Corner. But unfortunately, whatever happened there has brought his race seemingly to an end. We're trying to keep up with the action as well. Not too far behind. George Boothby and Marco Schade battling as well as we scramble on. Schade locked onto the gearbox of Boothby behind the Honda. Not a slouch in a straight line either. Can he go for a move up the inside in towards Brooklands? He can't, but he's absolutely on the tail of that Mustang, practically pushing him along through the sequence as they head on through in towards Luffield. on the power. Once again, a bit squirrely on the exit. We've got some battles further down the order as well, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to reach them. Unfortunately, it's Van Thielen versus Lauren Prima. I think it's number 31 of Van Thielen has got the job done and made the move stick. But Marco Schana now trying to find an opportunity past George Boothby, tucked under the rear wing of the Mustang. Through Maggotts and Beckett's they go. He tries to see if he can set up a stronger exit in the number 25 car on board the front splitter. Partly by choice, partly by fortune, determined by the delays that we are somewhat suffering with in the commentary booth. But we press on. Half an hour to go in this race. And it is game on between these cars. We can all just hang together for the time being. Nathan Walsingham has got up into P2 and he's pulled a gap of a second over the cars behind. And now it's a case of can he find a way to close that gap to Nicholas Hume. With 30 minutes left on the clock, he's looking about 20 laps left to go of this race. He's gaining, as it stands, about a tenth of a second per lap. That would not be enough. He needs to find a bit more in the tank. He needs to be finding closer to half a second. And that is not going to be an easy feat to achieve over a man that has been in fine form so far today. As we bounce around for everything that we're worth on the exit of Village Corner. Thank you for everyone who's been incredibly patient, sticking with the action and cheering on your drivers, because they are putting on some fantastic racing. Unfortunately, somewhat masked and weakened by the connection issues that we are having this evening. Like I say, this should hopefully be the last time that we have to deal with this one. I certainly hope so, because we've had a cracking race. Other than that, there's again Grant Karekas applying the pressure to the back of Michael Moning, who suddenly found himself positioned. Again, he is losing lap time. A lot of lap time at that. And just not able to contest with the pace of those in front. Now, I'm pretty sure as the order of the board reshuffles, there we go. More representative. Nicholas Huber still in the lead by 5.5 seconds, but he did lose again a tenth to Aidan Walsingham. So Aidan Walsingham does seem to be chipping into that lead, but just not quite enough for him to be able to do anything about the German driver leading the way as it stands right now. Grant Karekas trying to use every little millimetre of track. The corners is where this 296 really shines. But right now, just not quite able to get himself into a spot where he can go for an overtake. We've seen moments of opportunity sometimes occur through here at Abbey, because if you can keep up the momentum through a sequence and use it as somewhat of a launch pad into the braking zone, it can work out in your favour. Sometimes you'll see cars carry the momentum through this turn and try to nip out the inside for the next. If they can't do that, they'll try to open up the exit of the loop. You can see Karekas, he takes such a good line, but it just doesn't quite come to fruition. Meanwhile, George Boothby, Philip Menard and Marco Schana battling away in the background as well. It's George Boothby that's come out on top of that fight for the time being. I am trying to get us pictures towards that end of the grid, because I think Philip Menard is getting eager as well, trying to go around the outside of Marco Schana. He can't quite make it steep. Meanwhile, Leon Burns under pressure from the season opener winner, Eric Del Fanta, who rose to the occasion at Watkins Glen. And now Philip Menard, having gone from applying the pressure to the cars in front, has now got himself in a bit of spot of bother with Leon Burn under major pressure from Eric Del Fanta behind, trying to go around the outside in towards Copse Corner. He hasn't made it stick, but here comes Amadeo Castorino, seeing what he can do through Maggotts and Beckett's. Castorino side by side in the background. It's allowed Leon Burn to escape up the road, so it's all about the Ferrari versus the Aston Martin, and it's the Aston Martin that has come out on top. Excuse me, Aston Martin versus the Honda. Oh, there's a little bit of contact between, that was Lucas Roda and Eric Del Fanta there. Somehow they managed to make it through there okay. On the back straight, it's kicking off as well between Florian Duacop and Valentin Barrett in the background as well. I would so dearly love to show you a better close-up of the action, but I'm just not being allowed to point the camera in the right direction, so we will do our best. With that, Eric Delfanta seems to have maintained that position. Florian Duakop trying to hold off Valentin Barrier as well. I think he has indeed got the job done. And we've got a 5-second penalty for Luke Whitehead. 5-second penalty for forcing another car off track on lap 29. As meanwhile, Grant Carreras, typical, we couldn't actually make our way that way a moment ago. Grant Carreras has managed to get the move done on Michael Moning. And I'll tell you what, the other bit of news as well is that Team of Carpenter's really ramping up the pressure on Luke Whitehead, who's got bigger problems with that penalty coming on through. And so that can only be, I can assume, for the incident with Michael Moning, because we saw how he ended up on the grass, lost those 2 positions to both Carpenter and Whitehead, and the stewards have deemed that resulting series of incidents and moves to be on Whitehead's shoulders, and they have awarded him that 5-second time penalty. There's Castorino and Delfanta a bit further down the order, scrapping away for position. The reigning champion sitting in P11 at the moment. Don't think... Oh, is he close enough to get that? He's not quite close enough. Bit of a break in the pack after Michael Moning by 4 seconds. As a Team of Carpenter again ramps up the pressure onto Luke Whitehead. Yellow flag has come out for Aidan Walsingham, and I think that is a genuine yellow flag as well. Walsingham, a number 7 car, who was flying towards Nicholas Huben, has suddenly had an error of sorts. He was by himself. There he is, as we see him on the helicam. I'm not sure what has happened there for Aidan Walsingham, but he is tumbling down the order. So he spun out through Stowe, and an unforced error, and he will be devastated by that. P2 was looking reassured. And now, Nicholas Huben, surely an easy one to the end of this race. 7.5 seconds is the lead to Luke Whitehead, who has that 5-second time penalty. So it will be Teemu Karppinen right now that inherits P2, and Grant Carreras to be P3 as well. Both of those cars have had a fantastic charge through the top 10. But I'll tell you what, Michael Moning, if he can get himself back into that fight, he is losing pace still, so it's unlikely, but a podium still could be on the cards for the Mustang driver, the American, with between the penalty for Luke Whitehead and the mistake from Aidan Walsingham. So a disastrous couple of laps for the Veloce esports driver. So yes, Teemu Karppinen, net P2. Cheers in the chat for him. And it was a game freeze for Aidan. Oh, he'll be absolutely gutted over that. It's one thing if you make an unforced error and you make a mistake. It's a whole other thing if you end up suffering a technological issue. That's, I can tell you from first-hand experience for the evening that it can be an immensely frustrating thing to experience. So my sympathies are with Aidan there, because that was a fantastic driver he was having, and he's lost a huge amount of time there, down to P15 as a result. I'm not sure if he had any damage as a result of that spin. Hopefully not. And apparently got lucky the game didn't crash. And so yeah, very similar to what we saw with Nils Niox a couple of seasons ago, I think that was, at COTA, when, yes, he was, I think he was down in towards the hairpin into turn 1, if memory serves, driving along quite nicely, and then a huge game freeze to the point where he actually did think he had disconnected from the server entirely. Thankfully, managed to continue on, but yes, yes, unfortunately, Aidan Walsingham, the man that has been lucky and unlucky at the same time. But I tell you what, he might not be quite as lucky as Michael Moning. We've eventually managed to look towards Teemu Karppinen. This is kind of settled down, but it is around, and very interesting thing, because Grantis Carreras has got a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision on lap 33 with the number 27 car. So that is with Michael Moning. So we didn't see how the Ferrari got through, but it has resulted in a penalty. And I can tell you something, Michael Moning, with the penalties of Luke Whitehead and Grantis Carreras right now, is back in the podium spots in P3. And for those cheering on both Mr. Carpet and Michael Moaning, I'm sure will be delighted. Timo Carpenter right now looking actually to try to see if he can take this P2 position on track, make it hard-earned and hard-fought, and also sometimes a little bit hard to watch when we have cars skating around like that. But the Finnish driver trying to see if he can once again impress in that Bentley, as the timing board has a little bit of a shuffle for the time being. We'll see when that restores itself in just a moment. But fantastic stuff there for Michael Moaning. And Timo Karppinen, of course, the benefactor. And, of course, that'll be the second podium for a Bentley. Carlo, would I be right in assuming that the last podium would have also gone to Timo Karppinen? I can't remember any other drivers who would have been utilising that car perhaps to quite the same proficiency as Timo. But I could be wrong on that note. But yeah, for those, the Boatley lovers, myself included, that's be fantastic to see this car on the podium once again. Multiple occasions where this car has been able to battle amongst the front of the pack. We saw it a couple of seasons ago as well. I do believe we had Karppinen fighting for the win at Bathurst, and it just didn't quite come together. Got pushed off on the exit of turn 1, I believe, and that was when Castorino, I think, came through for what would be an eventuating victory for him. As speaking of the reigning champion, he is still locked in to a fight with Leon Burnt and Eric Del Fanta for P9, so positions around the top 10, looking very interesting as it stands. As we continue to press on. Hasn't been the easiest of evenings here in the commentary box, but it's been made a lot easier by the incredible action these guys have been putting on circuit, and also by you wonderful people joining in the chat once again, as Karppinen has a little bit of a moment. He's probably not too worried, to be honest, because the car in front's got a penalty and the car behind's got a penalty, so Karppinen, other than setting himself into a wall, doesn't have to be too concerned about that. But it's been 3 seasons since we've had a podium from this man in this car. It was Kyle Army that day, another time where I believe he was fighting for the race win. Didn't quite come together. So if he does stay as he is at the moment, this would be an all-time best finishing position for the Bentley. And well, we said it was going to be a Bentley circuit doing it on home turf, and have to wait and see how it all plays out. Michael Moaning still within that distance that he needs, that proximity that he needs to get a podium. The gap for him right now looking at 2.5 seconds to Luke Whitehead, so he is still within touching distance as we fly on through. But look at the timing board. Whilst unfortunately I can't take you through every piece of action as swiftly as I would usually like to, as I get rather hijacked by the delays that we are experiencing in the comms box on the camera narration side. That you can see just by that even after an hour and 40 minutes worth of racing, that we have cars P10, excuse me, P9 all the way down to P16, all within just a handful of tenths of each other. The battles for the podiums, whilst being somewhat decided right now by penalties, is very close as well. And also right now, who is going for the Jardier Trophy? For those perhaps new to the championship, the Jardier Trophy, a little bit of a joke, but also very much one to be commended and celebrated in the servers whenever we go racing in the Case King Pro Series. Your biggest mover on the criticals, that being somewhat usually the Jardier special. Right now I can see 9 positions for Samir Foch. We'll see what the end race results have to say. Karppinen, again, locked under the rear wing of the Porsche. Luke Whitehead, Aidan Walsingham resurging back through the order, making his way on by Florian Duerkop, has brought Lucas Roda and Valentin Barrier into the mix, as well as they all fly on through Stowe Corner into the club chicane. The battle for the podium positions as well, absolutely intense. Michael Moning, he is dropping away by a couple of tenths a lap. He's got to make sure. But if he stays at that sort of pace difference, especially if Timo Carpenter actually here could be the thing, it's going to be insulting, isn't it? The driver to be the difference maker for Michael Moning. And if he does get into a scrap with the number 3 Porsche up ahead, as 4 of the top 10 now have plus 5 second time penalty. Who else has a 5 second time penalty? The number 4 car, and that's Castorino. Castorino, so the reigning champion, Mr. Consistency, a 5 second time penalty for him, and with those cars locked in behind, that is going to see him drop, I think, towards barely inside of the top 15. Ed Walsingham should even be able to benefit on that front, and that was for forcing another car off track. So unfortunately, again, not something we were able to see and have a look at, but goes to show the margins and the intensity that these guys have been racing with over the course of the last hour and 15 minutes. But meanwhile, Carpenter, again, close to the back of Luke Whitehead. The Porsche bouncing away on the exit. As I've got so excited, I've punched my microphone into oblivion. Grant Carreras, in actual fact, trying to stay in the hunt on the back of Timo Carpenter. I suppose, realistically, because Carreras, his race, Boothby less than 6 seconds behind Whitehead. So, yeah, even George Boothby, oh my goodness, George Boothby could somehow find his way to P4 after what has really been a rather, for his standards, this is no disrespect as George Boothby whatsoever, but it's, purely because of the bar that he has set himself in the Case King Pro Series. A bit of an underwhelming performance from maybe P6 at the moment. But if Timo Carpenter does scrap away with Luke Whitehead, he can actually gain positions over both Whitehead and Carreras and end up in P4 of this race. Again, it'll be a bit of a recovery drive from the winningest driver, as there's Carreras. Now, I was going to say about Carreras, because bearing in mind, he is not fighting with Timo Carpenter. Timo Carpenter has nothing to really gain. Oh, how's he going to play it? And he is going to bump draft him towards Luke Whitehead. I had a feeling that he would, because there's no point really in Timo scrapping away here intensely with Carreras. Carreras has launched the attack, and that's not because Carreras is looking to take that fight to Carpenter. It's because he's looking to take the fight to the car in front, Luke Whitehead, because they've both got a 5 second penalty, so it's game on between those two. And you can just in the body language of Carreras' car versus Luke Whitehead, it does feel like there is a pace with the hands of Carreras now. And right now, so Boothby is right on the edge of Grant's penalty window. So yes, it's going to be very close between them. You can see, because there's less than a second between himself and Whitehead. But if those cars do start to scrap, then I would have to expect that George Boothby surely would get himself into a position where he would be able to capitalise and maybe take 1, if not 2 places back in the closing moments of the race. 10 minutes left on the clock to go, give or take, after what has been a crazy race in more ways than one this evening at Silverstone, your voted track, and it has delivered action in buckets loads, and it is continuing on, because look, Carreras, even in the space of half a lap, has found himself immediately on the gearbox of Luke Whitehead. And Ferrari versus Porsche is a much fairer and easier pace difference in terms of straight line performance than some of the other battles that we've seen. I am trying to get a better camera angle, I promise, but it may come down to seeing it in the peripheral vision. As Carreras, does he think about a move up the inside? No, he doesn't. He stays behind for just a bit longer. He knows he's got the pace advantage over Luke Whitehead at the moment. Clear as day that the prancing horse is looking after its tyres better than the Porsche in front, can carry so much more speed in the corners. Luke Whitehead has been struggling keeping that Porsche pointed in the right direction for the entirety of this race, as Grant Carreras looks calm, looks collected, and whilst an impressive battle, if he does get the position, it would be a net 6 positions gained for Carreras, which, to do that inside the top 10 is no easy feat whatsoever. But unfortunately, a 5 second time penalty is going to make life a bit more tricky. Meanwhile, looking at the gaps, Well, it's going to be very close, actually, because these guys, they're lapping pretty similarly. When did I click on Amado Castorino? I clicked on Castorino about 40 minutes ago, and the cameraman's just woken up and are now looking completely the wrong place. That's not what we wanted. No offense to Castorino, but he has got that fight going on, but I'm more interested right now in that fight inside of the top 5. We will look to try to go back towards Carreras. I'm assuming we'll find out about 2 to 3 working days as to whether or not he has managed to get that position over Luke Whitehead. We'll keep an eye on the time boards, also keep an eye on Leon Burtz and Eric Del Fanta hunting around the back of these guys. But like I say, after what's been a crazy evening of action so far, if you have been enjoying what the Case King Pro Series has delivered, do consider giving the channel a follow. I'm sorry about some of the wonky issues we've had technologically for the evening. Hopefully we should be back on track in a safer, calmer state from next week onwards, but these guys will be back delivering the same fantastic racing that you guys have been witnessing. We have had drama, we have had incredibly intense battles, and we've had shenanigans in the server for the evening as well. And these races, they count towards so much, some fantastic prizes brought by CaseKing.de, no less. In actual fact, and seeing as we are looking at a rather ill-timed fight for position further down the order than what we would be wanting to see at the moment. How about we do give a little bit of a showcase to these incredible prizes. So €2,500 coupon for the Aztec Sim Sports gear, brought to you by CaseKing.de for the winner of this season. A €1,500 coupon for Moser Racing gear, and in P3 a gaming PC from Black Dagger. And on all those prices, like I say, brought to you by CaseKing.de. Some incredible stuff up for grabs, and this is why these guys go fighting so hard every single time that we go racing, because there is so much on the line for them to be fighting away for. Positions have maintained both between our drivers at the pointier end of the grid and these guys near the tail end of the top 10. So many fights continuing on to the end. Absolutely some very nice prizes this season indeed. If you are any one of those top 3 drivers, I think you come away feeling pretty happy and chuffed with what you have achieved. And you see Eric Del Fanta, actually your race winner from the season opener, having a little bit of a look up the inside of Leon Burtz. Couldn't do anything about it there. I'll have to wait for another opportunity, will the Honda driver. As at some point in the future, if we're lucky, we'll be able to see how Grant Carreras, Luke Whitehead and Teemu Karppinen's fights are continuing. As just to give you a little bit of an update in terms of George Boothby's situation. So Boothby lapping very quickly, actually. He's lapping half a second quicker than Luke Whitehead. And so he's brought that gap down. Although, looking at my numbers, it's still very close, actually, for George Boothby. It's going to be marginal to the end. He really does need Carreras to apply the pressure to Luke Whitehead. I think it was looking safer when Teemu Karppinen was just behind the Porsche driver, but as it stands right now, he is a little bit away from that, and he has, in actual fact, it's not been the best lap from George Boothby back into the 58s. It was a 57.8 a moment ago, and should be less than 5 now. I don't know, I mean, based on my maths, I mean, maybe my delta is a little bit on the wonky side, but George Boothby has got a good, well, he's got a good 3 seconds to Michael Moning in P4. It's another 1.5 seconds up the road, then half second to Teemu Karppinen, then it's Carreras and Luke Whitehead in front of that. So it's marginal as it stands at the moment. We're talking, half a second to a second's worth of difference. Meanwhile, Carreras, I do believe right now, is trying to go for the move on Luke Whitehead. They are scrapping away, and that is for net position. Bearing in mind, they will be shuffled down the order. This is what George Boothby needs. We'll see how it plays out on the timing board, or if we catch a glimpse in the distance. Unfortunately, the timing board just won't let me have a look, as Carreras does seem to have got on through, and now has clean air with 5.5 minutes of racing remaining, as Whitehead also still under pressure somewhat by Karppinen, and Michael Moning closing the distance to that as well. 4 seconds to Timo Karppinen for George Boothby. And then just a few tenths, 4 seconds to Luke Whitehead, actually 4.5 to Grantis Korekas. So, as it stands, George Boothby would inherit those positions. I feel like he's got a good chance of getting the position from Luke Whitehead, but Grantis Korekas has seemingly had a lot of pace in his Ferrari in this second stint. So, can he pull away in clean air? We will have to wait and see. And we'll try to race, but on G29 wheel on desk chairs and roll backwards when they break. A real fun racing dynamic. Do you know what? I've been there in the exact scenario. Why would you even have a chair with wheels? Because some of us didn't quite have the luxury on occasion on having anything else. It is at least my personal experience. Yes, when in the confines of a rather tiny uni room, that I did find myself in that exact position. I would love to show you a replay, Pit Tam, but unfortunately, I've been hijacked by the server, my Wi-Fi, and all sorts this evening. I did actually select the camera for Korekas approximately 15 minutes ago, and I haven't been able to look since. So unfortunately, I cannot show you a replay. This is where we are for the rest of this race. But and so, I mean, in general, wheelie chairs are a fantastic experience and a great deal of fun. So I won't be having anything bad said about them on that front. The only thing I will say is that they are far from ideal in terms of when you are trying to hit the brake pedal remotely hard and you do find yourself, well, if you're lucky, you find yourself across the carpet. If you're unlucky, you find yourself into a hole in the wall. That's no further comments. Meanwhile, we've also got other suggestions in the chat. That's all you need is a ratchet strap and you can have wheels. Well, there were some creative solutions attempted. At times I know there's been several bits of string attempted to be wrapped around desks and tables and so on and so forth. It is a kind of a almost like a banger racing style equivalent when you get into that side of things for sim racing. I've seen some fantastic looking rigs. So I've seen people use shoes that's for that. You put the wheels inside. Oh, I see, to stop the chair from. I thought you meant the G29 for a second. I thought I was going to say that's an ambitious bit of Tetris arrangement going on there. That's a creative solution. I suppose it does give you the benefit of some traction if you've got a good pair of trainers, but hopefully maybe some ones that you don't care about quite so much, because I can't imagine that anyone's body weight and then transferred through the office chair wheels themselves would have done them a great deal of good. That's certainly a way to keep it all together on that front. Meanwhile, speaking of people keeping it all together, whilst we've had drama, chaos, and action all the way from start to finish, I'd love to show you the number 8 car leading our race, Nicholas Huben, right now. Unfortunately, I can't because I'm being held hostage. But he is 12 seconds up the road of anybody else. He has been just absolutely untouchable. The only driver that's even remotely at this level of pace at this stage of the race is Korekas. Now he's in clean air. He's a second clear of Luke Whitehead already. And Huben has been in absolutely stellar form. By far his best race, I think, that we've seen in the Pro Series. Was in the fight from the very beginning. Took a few laps to wind up the overtake. And then after that, never looked back. Yes, to answer the question, Jardier is indeed taking part. Unfortunately, he had an incident earlier on in the race, which saw him get sent around so a small amount of contact with this man actually at Stoke Corner, but not this man's fault. But a little bit of an overly ambitious squeeze towards the apex from Jardier. And unfortunately, that then sent him in a bit of a pendulum effect swing into Jade Hutchison and in some bystander trying to escape on the outside of the corner. And unfortunately, as a result, that collision then ended up seeing the Nissan tumble down the order as well. Jade has recovered impressively up to 24th place. He is trying to take 23rd away from the lead as it stands. So the Nissan driver still continuing to push on. as is Aidan Walsingham, who sits P12 at the moment, but Castorino, the number 4 car that we are looking at right now, does have a 5-second time penalty, so there is opportunities for Walsingham to maybe even get into the top 10 here, as my goodness, well, that's a spam and a half. That's so we will see as we progress towards the end of the race. I'm not sure if I can I do anything about that? I can't do anything about that. If someone else could do something about that, that'd be much appreciated. That's as Nightbot, as unfortunately a little bit unaware of how to deal with such a message on that front. But as Aidan Walsingham has, in fact, actually just done that very move on Eric Del Fanta. So I think Aidan will manage to still recover. There you go, just in the background. Did it at Stowe Corner. The Mustang Power helping a great deal. Of course, this is the final lap of the race. But he has got himself into P11. And with Castorino's penalty, as thank you very much, Penta, has got himself into a position where he will get back into the top 10, which after a major screen freeze is still an incredible feat from him, as he will be gutted. He was driving so well on that front that had a DNF because of migrant timing. Quite unfortunate stuff there, David. Sorry to hear that, buddy. But I'm glad you still enjoyed the race we've had going. I can't see him cross the line, but I can tell you a bit about him. Nicholas Huben, a dominant display from the Aston Martin driver, is going to win here at Silverstone for round number 3 of the Case King Pro Series. Karekas and Whitehead will cross the line on track, 2nd and 3rd, but it'll be Timu Karppinen and Michael Moning after a topsy-turvy race for those two drivers that will take the remaining spots on the podium. And I do believe George Boothby, the pace he's had at the end, has got himself in striking distance to take P4. We'll get confirmation of results hopefully in due course. There's another cheer from Turbo Pavey. Thank you very much, as he cheers on the man that is on the 2nd step of the podium today. Timu Karppinen gets that place and the best ever finishing position for a Boatley in the world of the Case King Pro Series as well. Great stuff there. Unfortunately, I can't look at another car crossing the line, so we might as well head over to the results show for the time being and wait for those to come on through as other drivers continuing on to the end of the race. Cheers as well for Janis Reinders further down the order as he finished in P15. P16 for him. I'm not sure he'll get any promotions in terms of end race penalties, but certainly a fantastic effort from his as well. My goodness, what a topsy-turvy race we have had this evening. Silverstone, an incredible one for us to watch and enjoy, and it certainly has been a pretty busy time both on track and in the comms box. It hasn't been the most ideal of scenarios here this evening, and I do very much appreciate all of your guys' supports in the server as well, sitting with us as we try to have a look through the results in just a short moment. Also look to catch up with drivers in the interview room as well and see exactly how their race is fared from their perspective. But whilst we wait to do that, if you have enjoyed the crazy action from this evening's race, do consider giving the channel a follow. Hopefully we'll be back on track when it comes to the internet side of things next week, and we can get dialed in for some more crazy action-packed goodness as we will look to bring in the first of our drivers on the podium. We do like to try to go in reverse order, and it's a driver that has had support week after week from the Twitch chats, and finally their prayers have come on true to fruition. Michael Moning going from strength to strength, a great time out last week at Suzuka, and now on the podium here today at Silverstone. You must be delighted with that result.
Session before the race, and I'm not on pace. And then something happens in qualifying, and it clicks, and I'm right there. And the race went pretty smoothly in my opinion. Obviously the Ford has got the straight line, so I went for the early pit, and it seemed like the optimal strat. But just a couple of contacts, but we still made it there. I think P2 would have been in the books, but that's all right. I'm super happy with this.
Yeah, of course, it's so easy after these races to think, what could have been, and, something just being a little bit out of reach. But, yeah, an absolutely stellar performance from you today. And it's been such, a run of form, top 5 last week at Suzuka, on the podium today, this surge of pace that's come through for you. And it's not just, it's not a scenario of the Ford is a fantastic and easy car to drive, because we've seen some very, very competent drivers, struggling to extract pace out of the car. So it's not just a BOP gimmick on this day. This is pure real pace. Where do you feel like this form has come from? Is it just that this car really suits you? What about it has given you this extra bit of pace?
Honestly, it all started when I got pedals. I got load cells, and those I just jumped up in pace like immediately. Not that you need to spend money, but that really helped. But honestly, the BMW, I was really clicking with the BMW. I was somewhat getting there in the BMW earlier this year, and then Ford released, and then it happened to be like the exact same car as the BMW. But it just super suits. Like, it's a super safe car, so I don't need to worry about like pushing too hard. It's full send, and I don't know. I'm very happy this week because I think I finally settled the BOP allegations. In SRO, I've been doing pretty well in SRO. In India, I qualified second, and I know the Ford was under bopped there, but that was still, those laps were so good. So I'm really happy to like be getting past the BOP allegations. That makes me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very fair to say that you have done this car and yourself very proud, because you have delivered in a car which may be a little bit on the, maybe a slightly safer car, a car that, allows you to extract the pace and push every single lap. But like I say, there's been plenty of drivers this evening that struggle to get that same level of pace out of it. So absolutely a well-earned podium from yourself to debut in the top 3 in the Case King Pro Series. Heading to a bit of a different circuit next week, the Hungaroring, and it's certainly a tricky and fiddly one, bit of a twisty one at that. The Mustang, I must admit, I'm not quite sure how it's going to fare there, because it's not a circuit that its straight line speed performance is probably going to be quite so powerful at. A good couple of opportunities where it may make some overtakes a little bit easier than other cars that may do. But how are you thinking that one may go for you?
I think it'll go well still, but it's one I'm gonna have to learn. It was already in AOR, so all those people that are doing AOR and this have a ton of practice. I don't know the last time I touched that track, but I feel good about it. I think I can make something happen. It's not like a crazy circuit, so I'm excited for it. I think I can make something happen again.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one that we head to next week. But, Michael, thank you so much for joining in the commentary box for an interview. Huge congratulations, both from myself and a lot of very happy people in the chat as well, for you to join the podium. But also, just as a little extra fun fact that I'm sure will even further extend that smile on your face. The first time that we've had an American driver on the podium as well. So, an amazing thing that you have done today as in this race for Silverstone, and I think so much to be proud of on all fronts from yourself. So amazing stuff from you, Michael. Fantastic to see your surge of form, and cannot wait to see how you go next week at the Hungaroring.
Thank you very much. I hope to talk to you again.
Myself and the rest of chat very much included, I think, Michael. Take care, and we'll see how you go next week.
Thank you. You as well.
Very, very happy man there in the Mustang, and absolutely, yes, a huge gain of elo for Michael Moaning, a very well-deserved one on that, and Nightbot striking down once again. That's as we speak to a lot of very happy people. The next man, but I think is going to be very happy indeed, one that has had a immense amount of support week after week. The Boatley finally makes its way to the podium once again, and to an all-time best result as well of a P2 finish. Timo Karppinen, a topsy-turvy race, I think it's safe to say, in that one, but a fantastic result to bounce back from possibly the slight disappointment of Suzuka last week. We won't focus too much on that side of things. Fantastic, well-deserved podium from yourself. You must be chuffed to bits with that one. How are you feeling, Timo?
Thanks a lot, thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean that was a sweaty one, not just because of the weather, but I think I kind of messed up with the setup of the car a bit, and I just had to fight the car for the whole 90 minutes, and that's why I didn't really want to challenge anyone for duel, like the wheel-to-wheel fight, because I was constantly just battling the car to keep it between the lines. So yeah, bit of an interesting one for sure.
So yeah, the Bentley is always an interesting car to drive. I feel like it's a bit difficult one to know whenever we go to a circuit to quite where it's going to sit in terms of pace and performance, because it's a tail happy beast at the best of times. We saw you have a couple of leery moments through Abbey Curve, especially with kind of that left rear dipping a little bit onto the grass and the gravel, causing a couple of scares there. How easy was it to control those moments? Was it quite as scary as it looked from the outside camera, or was it all a matter of calm inside the cockpit of that car?
I mean, yeah, the cockpit was basically full of hands the whole time. It's really controllable. It's not like I'm losing the car really, but if you overcook it a bit, and then you drop a wheel on the grass or something, then it's just gone and you can't do anything about it. So I was just trying to keep it kind of not quite on the limit, but a bit under the limit the whole time. But yeah, I don't know what I did with the setup, because in the practice session it was quite fine, but I think I didn't really try it out with the big fuel load at all. And when I saw the weather, I was like, okay, well I'm gonna go long for the first stint. But then people started undercutting, so I had to react to the undercut, and then I ended up putting again the heavy fuel load. So I kind of drove the car 20 kilos heavier than I was testing in the practice. So I guess that was kind of why the troubles came.
Yeah, it's always such a tricky thing in the race in terms of the strategy, because we did see people going very early on some of those undercut strategies, and that always, especially when you got these 90-minute races, it adds to the whole dynamic of then how that second stint plays out, because you do get those big shifts in position with the undercuts, and then people coming back through later on. Korekas obviously had huge pace at the end of the race as well, and that Ferrari, I think, taking care of its tyres a bit more kindly as well. So yeah, a very interesting dynamic, of course, of that race, but still, I think, an immensely well-deserved podium from you. And whilst maybe not from your side feel like you extracted the absolute max of the car had to offer, I think still a fantastic delivery of the race from your side. Next week, we'll be heading over to Hungaroring. Now, I've had some personal success in the Bentley at the past of this circuit, and I don't know how you're feeling on that front, but at least from my perspective, considering the nature of this car, it's a bit, the tail happiness of the Bentley, helps with the agility in the middle sector. Absorbent suspension makes some of those bits of the chicane a little bit kinder than some of the other cars that may end up dealing with it. Are you feeling optimistic for next round that we could be looking for another Bentley podium, or is it a little bit of a dicey one from your side?
Yeah, I mean, the car has a lot going for it on that track, but the weather is really cold, and I've noticed, at least in dispatch, the Bentley doesn't really seem to like the cold weather. On hot weather, it's insane. It's genuinely nuts how fast the car goes in hot weather, but it's then kind of the opposite in cold weather, and I think the forecast is showing pretty cold round. Also, another thing is that I'm just generally, as a driver, not that good in Hungaroring, so if I'll have to see what I can do with it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that you've been able to deliver bucketloads of performance over the last couple of races, and it'll be very interesting to see what you can do around the Hungaroring as well, whether this Bentley can go one step further up the podium and have it be a first win for this car. We will have to wait and see. But Timo, a huge congratulations to you for joining the podium once again, and like I say, getting the Bentley up to an all-time best finish in the Case King Pro Series. A fantastic milestone that myself and a lot of other people in the chat were very happy to see this evening. So thank you so much for joining for an interview. Congratulations for today, and best luck next week at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks also everyone in the chat, and hi to Mum.
Lovely stuff. Fantastic, Timo. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
How wholesome is that? That's all of those supporters in the chat, but none other greater supporter than Mum watching as well. And I think it's only fair to say as well from my side, hi Mum. That's Nicholas Hoover we will bring into the comms box as well, because whilst we did not quite see the greatest of camera shots on him focused at the time, because as he extended that lead into the distance and drove further and further away with all the chaos happening behind, we didn't see him all too much on camera, but it did not take anything away from a fantastic drive in the Aston Martin. Nicholas, a dominant performance from you in the end, an incredible display of pace and consistency. You must be absolutely delighted to be taken to the top step of the podium today.
Yeah, it was way better than expected, to be honest. I tried something new this time, and yeah, it paid off. I was somehow able to qualify P2. I mean, P1 was out of reach, but still, P2 was a good starting position, and then, yeah, I don't know why, but Luke was pretty slow in the beginning, and yeah, I was able to get him in pretty incredible fight. And then, yeah, just smooth sailing and bye-bye.
I love the idea that as you were driving away, that just kind of just waving behind to the people that you were leaving behind, as you extended that gap, because 12 seconds. I mean, I know it was a 90-minute race, but you know, it's still, you know, 12 seconds with the margins, you know, that we saw in qualifying, the margins in pace difference we saw over the course of the race. You know, there were times where you were 4 or 5 tenths quicker than anybody else, especially in the first stint. You kind of really just kept that momentum up. It was, you know, absolutely, you know, fantastic to see. What do you think, you know, was it that gave you that advantage? Do you think it was, you know, a combination of kind of yourself feeling dialed in with the circuit, the Aston, you know, performing quite strongly and holding onto his tyres for longer? Because, you know, we saw, you know, Amadeo, for example, reigning champion in that very car, not able to extract that same level of pace. What do you think was the difference maker from your side today on that front?
I think the difference maker today was, were the 2 cheerleaders that I have in my background today. 2 friends of mine. No, I don't know. I actually don't know. I just tried something new in the setup and it felt good. And yeah, I was able to win. We have to look further into it if it was the case.
Yeah, I have to look into the telemetry and all the numbers to understand why. But yeah, I think one more. Although I do quite like the idea that just the pure motivational support that you had in the background was what then allowed you to drive away. That it certainly does always help. We always know that, you know, the kind of like whether it's a home crowd advantage or just that level of cheer and support that you have in the background, it can sometimes bring out the best in you. And I think it's fair to say that today, Nicholas, you certainly did bring your best. An incredible drive from you at Silverstone. Next week, heading to the Hungaroring, very different circuit. A bit of a mixed bag potentially for the Aston. Not quite sure, at least in terms of kind of where, like, for me thinking forward, you know, where this car may start to sit in performance. Have you got any ideas yourself as to whether this will be another potentially race-winning track for you?
I have absolutely no clue, and I will see it basically next week.
It will keep us all on our toes when we head into the 4th round of the season then. I like it. Nicholas, an incredible display of pace, consistency and dominance from you today. A class drive, and a fantastic one for you, of course, in terms of the championship as well. So amazing to have you in the commentary box. Fantastic win this evening, and we look forward to seeing how you get on at Hungary next week.
Yeah, see you then. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Nicholas. Take care. Great stuff to talk to our race winner from today. An incredible display of performance from the Aston Martin driver, who drove extremely well in that one. And it'd be very interesting to see the dynamic between each of the cars next week, because Hungary is not an easy circuit. It's twisty, it's fiddly. And like I say, the Bentley, I don't know. I mean, you know, Timu's maybe less confident with that one, but I think if the VOP falls in a pleasant way for that car, I think the Bentley could be very good. The Porsche, you know, Luke Whitehead, maybe, the day didn't really go the way that he would have wanted. Pole position in qualifying looked very strong, but the raw race pace just wasn't quite there with that car. If it's cooler next week, that might start to aid that car a bit more, and I think the nature of that circuit is going to be stronger for him as well. So keep an eye on the likes of him. Karekas, I would think, would be good as well. He's quite clearly finding pace and form again in that 296. And it's a less power-dominated track. You need good consistency in medium and high-speed corners. And that may be an area where the Ferrari can look to deliver. So a very, very interesting one that we'll be heading into next week for that. In the meantime, though, before we head off for the evening, we'll go through our race results from this crazy, crazy evening of action. Nicholas Huben, Timo Carpenter, and Michael Mona ran out your podium, and there you go, confirmation there that by 7/10 of a second, actually, in fact, more than that one, about 9/10 of a second, George Boothby does get P4 in the end with Marco Schada, Karekas, Whitehead, Bernal, Walsingham, Delfanta, Frey, Castorino, Burnt, Duakop, and Barrier being the rest of your finishers inside the top 15. Janos Reinders taking P16. We saw some cheers for him in the chat as well. Rhoda, Bischoff, Manson, Van Thielen, Foch, Prima, Hutchinson, Goppelt, Razier, Addison, Soltov, Jardier, and Nuremberger to the end of the top 30. And as we head on to our final page of results, Vichorga, Santama, Muxa, Zahenda, your final finishers with Campanella, Rodriguez, Solon, Florence, Sherritt, and Niter, your DNFs for this evening. And as far as our biggest mover on the grid goes, I do believe, in terms of our winner of the Jardier Trophy, I'll do a little bit of double checking. I think it might be going the way of Florian Duakop in P14, 8 positions gained from 12 on the grid, and was stuck in that fight all the way to the end, just outside the top 10, as P11 was only just a second or so up the road. And also, in actual fact, I've spoken too soon, it actually goes to Konstantin Soldatov, starting P40, gaining 12 positions, and going up to 28th. Look, Hudson had a good ride through the field, as well as Samir Foch and Janis Reinders as well. So a few drivers managing to move their way up the order for the evening. But in the end, that wasn't quite what I meant to do, but in the end, it was Soldatov that ended up winning your Jardier Trophy for this race. What an evening of action we have had. What a drama-filled race we have had, both in terms of how life has been inside the comms box and the sort of action and drama that we saw on the circuit itself. A lot of contact, a lot of shenanigans in the early phase of the race. Some fantastic battles, close racing from start to finish, and so much we have been able to enjoy throughout the evening. And I cannot wait to see how we get on going into the 4th round of the season to Hungary next week. And I think with all of that, that is going to be our evening wrapped up and done. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching tonight. If you have enjoyed the crazy action and you do fancy tuning in for next week's race and the rest of the Pro Series, then do consider giving the channel a follow. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, and you can catch up on all the action for the evening and see what these guys have been getting up to, as we once again see the best of the best on ACC contesting for some fantastic prizes. It's such an amazing pool up for grabs. If you fancy getting behind the wheel of one of these cars, your cell phone getting stuck into the action race, you can head over to lowfieldmotorsport.com and you can work your way up through the ranks on the licensing system there and compete with these drivers in the Pro Series, of course, as well as platforms like the Daily Racing, Duo Cup Endurance, you name it, so much to get stuck into and involved with. And maybe if ACC isn't quite your cup of tea, you can also head over to Assetto Corsa 1, the OG version of the Kunos franchise, and do some amazing stuff over there as well. Such an array of cars to get stuck into, and a right mix to have some fun in as well. If you fancy some voluntary off-roading and a few close shaves with some trees, you can also get involved with the WRC Club Championship as well, available through the LFM website. So much to enjoy and get involved with there. And if you fancy just being a part of this amazing community and being welcomed in with open arms to share share all good things, sim racing, real racing, your dogs, your pets, you name it, and be a part of a wonderful group of people and make some new friends. You can also join our Discord server as well. It'd be wonderful to have you a part of that as we continue to grow and expand this community to dizzying heights in the world of low fuel motorsport. There is now over 185,000 of you in the world of LFM, almost 186,000, 200,000 suddenly doesn't feel that far away, which is just an absurd number and statistic, but one that everyone at LFM very, very happy, proud of, and welcoming in more and more of you every single day to join this wonderful little niche hobby and shindig that we have going on over here. I cannot wait to see where it continues to go in the future. But for tonight, then, thank you very so much for watching. Look forward to seeing all of you next week at Hungary for what should be another incredible race in the Case King Pro Series. Hopefully, the comms box side of things will be easier, the action a little bit better, and the championship all the tighter as we progress on through the season. I'm sure it's going to be a blast, and I cannot wait to be there with all of you. So thank you, everybody, so much for watching then. But for tonight, it's goodbye.